Chapter 1043. Chu Xiu had disliked Situ Chi and the others for a long time. He wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to get rid of them all. Mei Qinglian asked, "Become one of us? What do you want to do?" Chu Xiu turned his gaze to Chu Wuji, who was slumped on the chair and playing with a jade ring. He said, "Senior Chu, I'll have to trouble you to help me with this matter." Hearing Chu Xiu suddenly mention him, Chu Wuji was stunned and did not react. In fact, Chu Wuji was a very lazy person. In the past, Chu Wuji was born in the royal family of the Wei Kingdom. Although he spent most of his time in Jianghu, he still had some royal habits. Later, because the Wei Kingdom was destroyed, he joined the evil Dao. That was also the time when he cultivated crazily. It was also at that time that he was valued by Wei Shia. But later, when all his enemies were dead, Chu Wuji returned to his lazy self. It was not that he did not have the desire to excel, but this desire was not very strong. Therefore, when Wei Shia regarded Chu Xiu as the successor, Chu Wuji also did his best to help him, without any jealousy. In his opinion, if Chu Xiu could carry the banner of the Hidden Devil clan, he would be the one who would have it easy. Otherwise, if there was no Chu Xiu, he would be the next person to carry the banner of Wei Shia's clan. Although he was unwilling, because of Elder Wei's kindness in the past, he had to carry it even if he did not want to. Now that there was Chu Xiu, it was a happy ending. Therefore, for a period of time after that, Chu Wuji lived a very comfortable life. Most of the time, he followed Elder Wei. When there was something, he would help, and when there was nothing, he would just stroll around. It was more like a retirement than Wei Shia. At this time, when Chu Xiu mentioned himself, Chu Wuji sat up straight and said, "How do you need me to help?" Chu Wuji might be lazy, but he wouldn't decline when he was required to take action. Chu Xiu said, "It's very simple. I need Senior Chu to fall out with me." "Fall out with you?" Chu Wuji was stunned. Chu Xiu nodded and said, "That's right. The news of the sect master's reincarnation has already been acknowledged by the entire underworld. At this time, if there is an internal strife in the Devil Dao, I believe they will be happy to see it." "What's the reason?" "Even if I fall out with you for no reason, they won't believe me." Chu Wuji shrugged. "The reason is because of the sect master's reincarnation." Chu Xiu pointed to himself and said, "Right now, I am the leader of the Yinma clan, and Elder Wei also treats me as his successor. Now that the sect master's reincarnation has appeared, it will definitely affect my position. Therefore, if I return to Kunlun Mountain at this time, in the eyes of others, it will be me, Chu Xiu, being blinded by greed and eager to prove my position. As for Senior Chu, you fell out with me because you can't stand my actions. You are also jealous of me and dissatisfied that Elder Wei is biased towards me, a latecomer, and treats me as the successor of the Yinma clan. Therefore, you led a portion of the Yinma clan's warriors to fall out with me and split with me." Chu Wuji rubbed his chin and smiled bitterly. "You speak as if it's true, but to be honest, I have never had such thoughts. When Elder Wei chose you as his successor, I raised both hands in favor. I really can't sit in such a troublesome position." Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Of course I know this. Everyone here also knows this, but most of the Jianghu people don't know this. Therefore, we only need to let them see a fragmented Yinma clan. My occupation of Kunlun Mountain is not a threat. In their eyes, it is a hidden danger of the demonic paths division and an obstacle that needs to be removed for the sect master's reincarnation." Mei Qinglian raised her eyebrows and said, "Then how are you going to deal with Situ Chi and the others?" A cold light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes as he said, "If they learn of this news, do you think they will go to Senior Chu and take the initiative to propose an alliance? At that time, won't the problem be solved? What if they don't come?" Chu Xiu waved his hand and said with a murderous aura, "If they don't come, I will take the initiative to go to them and kill them all." In fact, when he learned that Situ Chi and the others had dared to take advantage of the situation, Chu Xiu had already had the intention to kill them. However, at that time, he had just experienced a great battle and there were too many things that needed to be sorted out. Moreover, there was an urgent need to investigate the East Sea, so Chu Xiu did not make a move for the time being. Otherwise, Situ Chi and the others would not have survived until now. After arranging everything, Chu Xiu directly took a part of the elites of the Jianghu Hall and openly set off to West Kunlun. He also made the news that he wanted to restore the orthodox diabolism, but he did not mention Dugu Weiwei at all. As soon as this news came out, it immediately shocked the Jianghu. Since the destruction of the Kunlun devil cult, the Kunlun mountain was the taboo of the taboo. No diabolism force dared to go to the Kunlun mountain, even the moon-worshipping cult had not been there. Now, Chu Xiu actually dared to do this. Was he crazy? In the Eastern Qi Chunyang Dao sect, in addition to the people of the Chunyang Dao sect, there were also Lu Changlu and Han Jusi from the true martial arts cult, as well as Zhang Daoling and Xian Longzi from the Taoist master mansion. The news of Dugu Weiwei's reincarnation was too shocking, so the three Taoist sects changed their indifferent appearance in the past and joined forces to discuss countermeasures. Zhang Daoling frowned and said, "What is Chu Xiu thinking? Why does he want to go to the Kunlun devil cult at this time? Is he preparing to welcome the reincarnation of Dugu Weiwei? In that case, should we stop him?" Because the Taoist master mansion was in West Chu, they had the least dealings with Chu Xiu, and they did not know much about Chu Xiu's character. Ling Yunzi shook his head and said, "No need to stop him. Chu Xiu is going to West Kunlun now. I'm afraid he is panicking. For us, it is a good thing." "Oh? Why?" Ling Yunzi said in a deep voice, "Chu Xiu is a person with wild ambition. He is also a rare hero. Compared to the older generation of diabolism, he is even worse. A person like him would never submit to anyone. In the past, he betrayed the Blue Dragon Society and joined the Guanzhong torture room. In fact, he was digging up the foundation of the Guanzhong torture room. In the end, when Guan Siyu died in the hands of Tianmen Divine Lord Luo, he seized the Guanzhong torture room. After that, he joined the Northern Yen and established the Martial Suppression Hall. He also listened to orders but did not listen to orders. When the Northern Yen Emperor Xiang Long died, he deposed the crown prince and supported his own puppet as the emperor. This has happened time and time again. Do you all think that Chu Xiu is someone who is willing to bow down and be a coward? Moreover, he was not a direct descendant of the Yinma clan. He did not have that much respect for the Kunlun devil cult and Dugu Weiwei. So, his actions this time only have one meaning. That is to occupy the Kunlun mountain before Dugu Weiwei is born. He will get the position of orthodox diabolism and take the initiative." Zhang Daoling said, "What if Dugu Weiwei really appears again?" Ling Yunzi sneered, "That depends on the situation. Everyone has heard of reincarnation, but never seen it. If Dugu Weiwei reincarnated and became the devil lord who suppressed the whole world, he would most likely offer Mount Kunlun to the devil cult, saying that he was the vanguard of the devil cult. If something happens to Dugu Weiwei after reincarnation, and he loses his memory or doesn't have the power he had 500 years ago, then he will occupy the Kunlun devil cult and make himself the orthodox diabolism." Ling Yunzi had fought with Chu Xiu several times. Every time he suffered a setback, he would study Chu Xiu's way of doing things. He thought he understood Chu Xiu very well. In fact, if Chu Xiu did not take the initiative to set this up, and such a thing really happened, Chu Xiu would really do as Ling Yunzi said. He would first occupy the Kunlun mountain, and then decide whether to endure or not. Zhang Daoling hesitated. "Even so, we cannot ignore this matter. Kunlun mountain has been sealed for 500 years. The news of Dugu Weiwei's reincarnation has spread all over Jianghu. Now, with Chu Xiu's return to Kunlun mountain, this is a very serious blow to the orthodox." Ling Yunzi said in a low voice, "We have to intervene, but not now. We have to intervene last. The latest news has been sent." Chu Wuji and Chu Xiu turned against each other, and left the Jianghu Hall with a group of the most senior warriors of the Yinma clan. Before Chu Xiu appeared, Chu Wuji was the one with the strongest potential in Wei Shi's bloodline. In the future, he would definitely be the successor of Wei Shi's bloodline. At the same time, he might also be the leader of the hidden devil bloodline. However, ever since Chu Xiu had appeared, Wuxia had completely changed his usual fair and just attitude. He had tried his best to protect Chu Xiu, so it was normal for Chu Wuji to be unhappy. In addition, Chu Xiu's insistence on going to Kunlun Mountain would definitely make some of the direct descendants of the Yinma clan dissatisfied. Division was inevitable. Dugu Weiwei's reincarnation has not been found, and we have no time to care about the Yinma clan and the moon-worshipping cult. Since they were already fighting amongst themselves, he would let them fight amongst themselves first. And don't forget, there is more than one Kunlun devil cult on Kunlun Mountain. There is also the Kunlun Elysium. Chu Xiu killed the Elysium Divine General, and he has already made a great enemy of Elysium. This time he went back to Kunlun Mountain. Elysium might also make a move. With so many obstacles in front of us, we are not in a hurry to make a move. Let's just watch the show first. We will deal with it after the show is over. Hearing Ling Yunzi say so, Lu Changlu and Zhang Daoling did not say much. After all, for them, finding Dugu Weiwei's reincarnation was the most important thing. Everything else could be postponed. But they also sighed in their hearts. Chu Xiu had really forced Ling Yunzi into a corner. Ling Yunzi was the sect master of Chunyang Dao sect, a dignified supreme master of heaven and earth mysterious realm. In the end, he had to carefully collect information on Chu Xiu and speculate on the thoughts of a junior martial artist like Chu Xiu. Thinking about it made him feel sad. Of course, Ling Yunzi was really forced into a corner by Chu Xiu. They had fought several times. If it was a one-on-one battle of life and death, how could he, a dignified supreme master of heaven and earth mysterious realm, lose? But every time at the critical moment, he was forced to retreat by Chu Xiu's means. This made him feel extremely sullen. Only then did he start to carefully study Chu Xiu's character and means. Chapter 1044. Going back to Kunlun Mountain was crazy. If it had been in the past, Chu Xiu would have been blocked by a group of righteous experts before he could reach West Kunlun. Now, although some people felt that it was not right to let Chu Xiu go back to Kunlun Mountain so easily, the news of Dugu Weiwei's reincarnation shook the entire Jianghu. How could they have time to care about Chu Xiu? In particular, the news of Chu Wuji and Chu Xiu's falling out made some righteous sects even more disinclined to care about this matter. Most people had the same opinion as Ling Yunzi. Dugu Weiwei was a great calamity for the entire Jianghu. Chu Xiu. He used to be a threat, but in front of Dugu Weiwei, he was nothing more than a scabbard. Now that the lurking devil clan had fallen out with him, he would let them bite each other first. When they were done biting each other, he would deal with them when he was free. At this moment, at the border of Wei County, Situchi, Siwuya, and the other cultivators who had gone to the martial suppression hall to add insult to injury were all gathered here. Some of their disciples were also there. This was almost all of their strength. Recently, Situchi and the others had a very difficult time. In the past, they were all big shots in the lurking devil clan. No matter how much power they had, they still had a status. However, as the three of them fell out with Chu Xiu, and even Li Jiaodi was killed by Chu Xiu, Situchi and Kuan-Mo became more and more difficult. They had been rebuked by Chu Xiu time and time again. It was utterly humiliating. Their power and influence in the hidden devil clan had been completely lost. Now, the entire lurking devil clan had actually been completely divided. Most of them were on Chu Xiu's side. He was already the veritable leader of the lurking devil clan. Wei Shi's bloodline, the bloodline of the phaseless demon sect, and a large number of rogue cultivators and backbone forces of the hidden devil bloodline all stood on Chu Xiu's side. Naturally, there were also some people who remained neutral. For example, sectless cultivators like the Earth Devil cultivator, Yumoya, were in the minority compared to forces like the Scarlet Drill Devil sect. As for Situchi and the others, they had almost all been excluded from the Yinma clan. Other than their own pitiful disciples and grand disciples, they had almost no one else under them. Therefore, when Siwuya came looking for them, they seemed to have found a way out. They joined forces with Siwuya to fish in troubled waters and dig out Chu Xiu's roots. Si Wuya stood before the gate of Wei County's citadel built by Jiangshan Pavilion. He said in a deep voice, "Is Chu Wuji here?" Situ Chi nodded and said, "Chu Wuji used to be a member of the royal family of the Wei Kingdom. After he fell out with Chu Xiu, he brought his men to Wei County." Si Wuya looked at the city gate. A myriad of thoughts ran through his mind. Back then, there were many powerhouses trapped in the primitive demon cave, but only the demonic path was different from the righteous path fellows. Even after 800 years, those people from the righteous path would still be able to find their own sect. However, what about them? When they finally saw the light of day again, when they turned around, their sect was long gone, and they were all alone. Who could accept that? Si Wuya and the others were once sect leaders or elders of major fiend path sections. Naturally, they could not accept such a situation. That was why they had tried to dig out Chu Xiu's roots and take over a portion of the hidden devil bloodline's power. However, they did not expect the hidden devil bloodline to be so stubborn even when they were in such dire straits. Now that Chu Wuji had fallen out with Chu Xiu and the others, it gave Si Wuya a chance to regain control of the hidden devil bloodline's power. At this moment, Situ Chi said hesitantly, "Brother Si, why don't we give up? News of the sect master's reincarnation has spread. The more we do, the more mistakes we'll make. Why don't we wait patiently and see if the sect master's reincarnation really appears? We'll make our move when the time comes." Situ Chi had suffered at Chu Xiu's hands several times. In truth, he had developed a sense of fear toward Chu Xiu. He was slightly reluctant to go against Chu Xiu now. However, he was an expert in the true fire spirit refinement realm, after all. He was one of the bosses of the fiend path in the past. It was too early for him to make a move now. If Dugu Weiwei really appeared, he would immediately side with the sect master and speak ill of Chu Xiu to the sect master. If Dugu Weiwei did not appear, and Chu Wuji had fallen out with Chu Xiu, he would look for an opportunity to deal with Chu Xiu. It was too early for him to make a move now. Si Wuya frowned and said, "Wait patiently. Time doesn't wait for me. If we miss this opportunity, when do we have to wait? Brother Situ, you should know that Chu Xiu's subordinates used to be united. It's rare for his subordinates to be divided. If we miss this opportunity, it'll be too late for regrets." Si Wuya had always looked down on Situ Chi. The cultivators of his generation were born in troubled times. They fought and killed in the martial world. The power they wielded was comparable to the sect masters of the major sections. In the end, Situ Chi and the others were not weak, and yet, they ended up like this. Moreover, they were humiliated by a junior like Chu Xiu. It was only natural that Si Wuya felt disdain toward them. Moreover, Si Wuya did not know about Dugu Weiwei's existence. Ever since they left the primitive demon cave, Si Wuya and the others had used many channels to learn about the current martial world, mainly the fiend path. The name Dugu Weiwei was what they heard the most. Although the rumors described Dugu Weiwei as powerful and incredible, Si Wuya had not lived through that era. Moreover, he was not like Situ Chi and the others who had grown up listening to legends about Dugu Weiwei. Therefore, he felt that everything about Dugu Weiwei was exaggerated. For this reason, Si Wuya would not place his interests in the hands of an illusory reincarnated cultivator. Situ Chi did not say anything when he saw how determined Si Wuya was. Ever since he joined forces with Si Wuya to dig up the lurking devil progeny's foundation, his relationship with the lurking devil progeny was completely severed. Even Qin Chaoxian and the others who had taken a neutral stance were no longer willing to interact with him. Although Qin Chaoxian and the others did not help him back then, they were all members of the lurking devil progeny. Not only did Situ Chi refuse to help, but he even took advantage of the situation. That was too much. "Let's enter the city." Si Wuya waved his hand. The group entered the citadel. The citadel was a new city. When Jiangshan Pavilion had first taken control of Wei County, they had paid a great price to build it. They wanted to use it as their capital city. Now that the kingdom of Wei was gone, Wei County was Wei County once again. The so-called capital city was now a joke. In truth, the northern Yan did not object to the kingdom of Wei's existence. Chu Xiu had already informed Xiang Li that Jiangshan Pavilion was willing to back down. In that case, everything would remain the same. However, after Zhao Yuanfeng went to the northern Yan, he felt uneasy. That was why he took the initiative to erase the kingdom of Wei's name and reverted to the northern Yan's Wei County. At this moment, they were in a palace in the citadel. This used to be the imperial palace. However, some of the taboo decorations had been removed by Jiangshan Pavilion. Zhao Yuanfeng looked at Chu Wuji, who was sitting across him, and smiled bitterly. Chu Wuji had been in the citadel for a long time. He was staying here with a group of lurking devil progeny cultivators as though he wanted to settle down here. He knew about the fallout between Chu Wuji and Chu Xiu. Therefore, he really did not want Chu Wuji to stay here. He was a ticking time bomb. However, the problem was that he did not dare to drive Chu Wuji away. Jiangshan Pavilion had suffered heavy losses before. An elder and a large number of disciples had died. It was still unknown whether they could defeat the people brought by Chu Wuji. Most importantly, he did not know what was going on between Chu Wuji and Chu Xiu. As the most prestigious person in the lurking devil progeny, Wei Xia, who had personally promoted Chu Xiu and Chu Wuji, was now in closed-door cultivation. If Wei Xia came out of closed-door cultivation and used his prestige to subdue Chu Xiu and Chu Wuji and make them reconcile, he would offend them for no reason. That would be tragic. Therefore, Zhao Yuanfeng could only say cautiously, "Brother Chu, it's just a small problem between you and official Chu. There's no need to be so hostile, right? It's not good for you to stay in Wei Prefecture all the time. Why don't you return to the subduing martial hall and talk things over? Maybe the problem will be solved." Chu Wuji glanced at Zhao Yuanfeng and snorted, "Why? Pavilion Master Zhao, are you driving me away? You should know that Wei Prefecture used to be my Chu family's Wei Kingdom. Strictly speaking, this is my territory. Now that Pavilion Master Zhao has occupied this place, I haven't said anything. Why are you driving me away?" Zhao Yuanfeng smiled awkwardly and said, "You must be joking, Brother Chu. Why would I drive you away? I'm just..." Before he could finish speaking, a voice rang from outside. "Wei Prefecture may not have a place for you, Brother Chu, but there's bound to be a place for you in the pugilistic world. Moreover, the lurking devil progeny was built by you and Chu Xiu in the past. Why are you leaving without anything and giving it to Chu Xiu? Brother Chu, come with me. Let's get back what you've lost." As soon as the voice finished speaking, Si Wuya and the others walked into the great hall. Zhao Yuanfeng's expression was grim. These people had barged in without permission. It was clear they had forced their way in. With Jiangshan Pavilion's resources, it was true that they built a palace in a hurry without a formation. Indeed, it could not stop a true fire soul refinement realm expert. However, they had swaggered in. It was clear they had no intention of showing Jiangshan Pavilion any respect. When Chu Wuji saw Si Wuya and the others had come, he frowned. Chu Xiu had asked him to put on an act to attract the attention of the Noble Path sects and create the illusion that the Fiend Path was fighting among themselves. This was to create an opportunity for Chu Xiu to ascend Kunlun Mountain. He did not expect Si Wuya and the others to take the bait and come to him. It seemed like he could not stay idle anymore. It was time for him to put on an act. Chapter 1045. Since Si Wuya and the others had come knocking on his door, Chu Wuji did not hold back. Although he did not think his acting skills were as good as Chu Xiu's, at the very least, he was not too bad. When Chu Wuji saw them, his expression darkened as he said, "Situ Chi, what are you doing here? Are you here to watch me make a fool of myself?" Situ Chi shook his head and said, "Brother Chu, what are you talking about? We came all the way to Wei County just to watch you make a fool of yourself. Don't you think we have too much time on our hands? We've heard about what happened to you. Chu Xiu has crossed the line. News of the sect master's reincarnation has just surfaced in the pugilistic world, and yet, he wants to go to Kunlun Mountain first. Isn't this crossing the line? He doesn't know the rules. Moreover, he turned on you as soon as Elder Wei went into seclusion. It's clear how cold-blooded Chu Xiu is. We've only come this time because we want to invite Brother Chu to go look for Chu Xiu and ask for justice. Chu Wuji sneered and said, "Do you think I don't know what kind of people you are? Why would you be so kind as to help me? You're doing this for yourselves. Get lost. I'll seek justice myself. There's no need for you to interfere." Chu Wuji's attitude was extremely rude. However, Situ Chi and Si Wuya were not enraged. From their point of view, Chu Wuji had just fallen out with Chu Xiu and led his people away in a miserable manner. It was normal for him to be angry at this moment. Si Wuya took a step forward and said in a deep voice, "Brother Chu, since time has stopped for 800 years, we're of the same generation. In my era, whether it's the noble path or the fiend path, there's an order and a rule. There's an order of seniority, just like in a dynasty. Although the path of the martial path no longer depends on age, those who are older still have a certain status in the sect. Brother Chu, you were valued by Elder Wei before Chu Xiu. Now, all of Chu Xiu's status, all of his power, and the support of the Yinma bloodline actually belong to you. Chu Xiu is powerful, so it's reasonable for him to take all these things. But now, he's driving you out of northern Yen. That's too much." Chu Wuji snorted and said, "I wasn't driven out by anyone. I left on my own." Si Wuya smiled and said, "That's not important. What's important is that as long as Chu Xiu is around, you'll never be able to stand out." As Si Wuya spoke, he called out to a cultivator who was also one of the cultivators from 800 years ago and said, "Daoist Master Blood Wirm, tell us about your divination." Si Wuya pointed at the Daoist priest who was dressed in a blood-red Daoist robe and said, "Daoist Master Blood Wirm is a grandmaster who specializes in divination. His strength isn't inferior to the great radiance temples Su Jing or the Sabodi monasteries Xiaomo." Daoist Master Blood Wirm held a horsetail whisk in his hand. He looked at Chu Wuji and muttered, "Brother Chu, your surname is Chu. Chu Xiu's surname is also Chu. However, you came before him when you joined the Yinma bloodline and won Elder Wei's favor. This karma, this opportunity, belongs to you. However, there are times when the heavenly Tao is careless and allowed Chu Xiu to cut off your karmic luck. It's precisely because the two of you have the same surname that this happened. This time, we'll help you reclaim the Yinma bloodline's authority. Chu will replace Chu. This is karma and destiny." When Chu Wuji heard Daoist Master Blood Wirm's words, he nearly laughed out loud. Even if he had not eaten pork, he had seen pigs run. Indeed, Chu Wuji was clueless about divination. However, Master Yuan Ji, who was under Chu Xiu, was a grandmaster who specialized in divination. Daoist Master Blood Wirm was clearly spouting nonsense. How could his surname affect karma and luck? What a joke. Chu Wuji forced himself not to laugh out loud. He said in a low voice, "Is what you said true?" Daoist Master Blood Wirm said, "Of course. 800 years ago, I was already a rare elite in the pugilistic world with my divination skills. There are only a handful of people in the pugilistic world who are on par with me." Chu Wuji secretly pursed his lips. If you're really good at divination, you wouldn't have been trapped in the primitive demon cave for 800 years. However, despite these thoughts, Chu Wuji pretended to be tempted. He said hesitantly, "Even if that's the case, how are you going to fight Chu Xiu?" "Do you think I don't want to fight Chu Xiu?" "That's because I can't. Chu Xiu has a mystic enlightening realm elite like Shang Tianliang by his side. It's useless even if Elder Wei is on my side. Forgive me for being blunt, but with your meager strength, even with me, you're still useless against Chu Xiu. I'll just wait here obediently. When the sect master reincarnates and returns to the pugilistic world, I'll go to him and complain about Chu Xiu. Perhaps, when Elder Wei comes out of seclusion, I'll ask him to uphold justice." Si Wuya narrowed his eyes and said, "It's not just you and us. Brother Situ, tell me, who else have we contacted?" At the side, Situ Chi said, "The Crimson Drill sects Qin Chao Xian, Yu Moya, and the others are currently waiting for Chu Xiu at the foot of Kunlun Mountain. Kunlun Mountain isn't that easy to ascend. Why does Chu Xiu want to ascend Kunlun Mountain just because he says so? Who is he to ascend Kunlun Mountain? Brother Chu, as long as you confront Chu Xiu in front of everyone and point out his wild ambition, I can guarantee that nobody will stand on Chu Xiu's side." Chu Wuji waved his hand and said, "Those below the mystic enlightening realm are but ants. Under the heavens, apart from Chu Xiu, Kang Dongming, and a few other freaks, nobody can stop a mystic enlightening realm elite. You don't know Chu Xiu. With how ruthless he is, what will you do if he doesn't care about his reputation and kills without any excuses?" In the eyes of Si Wuya and the others, Chu Wuji was already convinced. He was considered half one of them. Hence, Si Wuya no longer concealed the trump card he had prepared. He smiled faintly and said, "Brother Chu, have you heard of the great ancient fiend path sect, the heaven-devouring fiend sect?" Chu Wuji narrowed his eyes and said, "Yes, I have. It's said that it's a top fiend path sect in the ancient times. However, I think they killed themselves while researching some secret method to advance their cultivation base. They were destroyed before the great ancient calamity." A smug smile appeared on Si Wuya's face as he said, "In the past, I obtained a supreme treasure of the heaven-devouring fiend sect, the heaven-devouring fiend gourd. Although the heaven-devouring fiend gourd is slightly damaged, as long as each of you offers a portion of your blood, it'll be enough to replenish the formation veins in the gourd. When the time comes for battle, the heaven-devouring fiend gourd will have the power to change the world. It'll forcefully twist the laws of heaven and earth, and the mystic enlightening realm will no longer exist. Without the threat of a mystic enlightening realm elite, would Chu Xiu still dare to flip the table?" Chu Wuji appeared pleasantly surprised, but inwardly, he thought, what a close shave. These fellows had been beaten up by Chu Xiu several times. Even Chu Wuji had underestimated them. He had forgotten that they were martial artists born 800 years ago. In that era, Dugu Weiwa had yet to dominate the world of Jianghu. Thus, nearly all of the demonic path's supreme treasures were in the hands of the various large sections. Every family had their own hidden treasures. Chu Wuji thought about it for a moment before he gritted his teeth and said, "Fine. I'll go with you. I hope you won't disappoint me." Si Wuya laughed and said, "Don't worry, Brother Chu. We're doing this for the future of the fiend path. We won't let that madman, Chu Xiu, control the fiend path. We won't lose." Chu Wuji nodded. He turned to look at Zhao Yuanfeng and said calmly, "Pavilion Master Zhao, are you all right after listening to us?" Zhao Yuanfeng was shocked. He hastily said, "Brother Chu, you've been in Wei County for a long time. I've never mistreated you. Don't worry, I'm a tight-lipped person. I know what I can say and what I can't." Si Wuya waved his hand casually and said, "It's fine. This is an open plan. It's not a big deal even if he tells Chu Xiu." After the others left, Zhao Yuanfeng wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. For the first time, he felt that the Central Plains warriors were too dangerous. Zhao Yuanfeng regretted his decision. It was safer overseas. However, when he thought about it, if he had stayed overseas, he might have gone to hell with his godfather. What a sin. Zhao Yuanfeng shook his head. He told his disciples to be careful while he went to cultivate in seclusion. 3 months later, in the far west, Chu Xiu led a group of elites from the Martial Suppression Hall and the Lurking Devil clan through the desert of the far west. They finally saw the Kunlun mountain range that traversed the far west. The far west was sparsely populated. Most of the lands were barren. The weather was sometimes hot and sometimes cold. It was not suitable for human survival. Hence, in the vast far west, Sword King City was the only martial faction that could be considered part of the Central Plains. The others were small nations in the western region. As they went further west in the far west, the altitude became higher. Everyone could see the snow-covered Kunlun mountain range. The moment he saw the Kunlun mountain range, Lu Jianghu sighed but did not say anything. He was not a warrior who had been trained by the Kunlun devil cult since he was a child. He had joined the cult halfway. Even so, he had experienced the most glorious period of the Kunlun devil cult. As a result, he had dreamed for 500 years. The building had collapsed, the Kunlun devil cult was gone, and his old friends, enemies, people he disliked, and even the person he loved were gone. Even though Lu Jianghu was not a sentimental person, he still had a lot of thoughts when he saw the Kunlun mountain range again. Previously, Lu Jianghu was still a little dissatisfied with Dugu Weiwei. Although he did not resent him, he was also dissatisfied that Dugu Weiwei had locked him up for 500 years because of such a small matter. But now, he was even a little grateful to Dugu Weiwei. If Dugu Weiwei had not locked him up in the blood soul bead, it might have been the turn of the other juniors of the Kunlun devil cult to mourn him. Mei Qingnian stood behind Chu Xiu and said softly, "Are we going to climb the Kunlun mountain now?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said with a cold look in his eyes, "Chu Wuji sent news that someone has taken the bait. Before climbing the Kunlun mountain, let's get rid of those guys first." Chapter 1046. To ascend Kunlun mountain, one had to pass through Dragon's Gate first. There was a natural pass on the path to Kunlun mountain. It was called Dragon's Gate. In the past, when the Kunlun demon sect was still around, they had once rebuilt this mountain pass and sent people to guard it, treating it as their mountain gate. This move could be said to be very impressive. After all, other sects would at most send a few disciples to guard the mountain gate, and get a plaque to open the gate, and that would be fine. At this moment, Si Wuya, Situ Chi, and the others were at Dragon's Gate. Qin Chaoxian and the others from the Crimson Devil sect were there as well. It could be said that apart from Chu Xiu's group, the lurking devil progeny was here. Both sides had gathered. Qin Chaoxian glanced at Situ Chi and said indifferently, "Situ Chi, I'm warning you. We're not here to fight against Chu Xiu. We're here for the future of the lurking devil progeny." Situ Chi smiled and said, "Don't worry, Sect Master Qin. At a time like this, we won't act recklessly. You're thinking about the future of the lurking devil progeny. I'm a member of the lurking devil progeny as well. Don't tell me I don't care about the lurking devil progeny's future." Qin Chaoxian glanced at Si Wuya and projected his voice. "Why are you colluding with Si Wuya and the others, then? We're not on the same side as them. Strictly speaking, we might even be enemies. Who knows if their descendants were annihilated by the righteous Tao or our holy sect 500 years ago?" Situ Chi said, "You worry too much, Sect Master Qin." Si Wuya and the others didn't think too much about it. Since their sect no longer exists, they'll have to rely on either the lurking devil progeny or the bright devil progeny. Since their sect no longer exists, they'll have to rely on one side. The moon-worshipping sect has nothing to do with them. It's a good thing that they've chosen the lurking devil progeny. All you need to know is that they're on our side, Sect Master Qin. That's enough. Qin Chaoxian looked at Si Wuya and the others. He was still skeptical. These guys were not on the same side as them from the beginning. Otherwise, they wouldn't have taken advantage of Chu Xiu's absence last time to hit them when they were down. However, this time, Qin Chao agreed to come first, not because of Chu Xiu, but because Chu Xiu's return to Kunlun Mountain involved too much. That was the holy land of the demonic Tao. It represented the final glory of the demonic Tao. The matter of Chu Xiu's return to Kunlun Mountain had to be explained in detail. At this moment, Si Wuya suddenly said, "They're here." In the distance, a group of people slowly approached, and the person walking at the front was surprisingly Chu Xiu. As Chu Xiu approached the Dragon Gate, every step he took seemed to have a subtle connection with the world around him, causing his aura to become inexplicably heavy. By the time Chu Xiu arrived before Dragon's Gate, the sky was already in a whirlwind. Violent energies danced in the air like dragons and snakes as though they were welcoming Chu Xiu. Whether it was Situ Chi, Si Wuya, Qin Chaoxian, or the others, everyone looked at Chu Xiu with a hint of shock in their eyes. It did not matter who they were or who they were plotting against. The only thing that mattered was that they were all martial artists who had reached the true fire spirit refinement realm. The might that Chu Xiu displayed was unimaginable to them. In fact, he seemed to possess the aura of someone in the mystic enlightening realm. Si Wuya's heart was shrouded in a haze. However, in just a blink of an eye, the haze was gone. Since the sword was unsheathed, there was no way it could be sheathed. If Chu Xiu had reached the mystic enlightening realm, Si Wuya's schemes would have been pointless. However, Chu Xiu had not reached the mystic enlightening realm yet. He could not affect the situation. Si Wuya adjusted his emotions. He snorted and said, "What's the big show of force for?" "A show of force?" No one replied. At this moment, everyone's gaze was on Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu glanced at the people present, and both sides were silent for a while. Then, he slowly said, "Everyone, are you here to die?" Upon hearing this, the expressions of Situ Chi and the others changed. Even Qin Chaoxian, who had not planned to make a scene, changed. Situ Chi said coldly, "Chu Xiu, what's the meaning of this?" Chu Xiu said coldly, "What's the meaning of this?" "I'd like to ask all of you what's the meaning of this?" The Noble Path sects did not stop me from ascending Kunlun Mountain. The Bright Devil tribe did not stop me either. However, all of you came to stop me. Now, you're asking me what's the meaning of this? My meaning is simple. Those who stand in my way will die. As soon as Chu Xiu finished speaking, the howling wind and clouds in the sky suddenly exploded. Dark clouds obscured the sunlight. The sky instantly darkened. Situ Chi's expression changed slightly. He shouted, "Chu Xiu! Do you have any respect for the rules? Do you really think you're the sect master's successor? We're not trying to stop you. We're just asking for an explanation. Kunlun Mountain doesn't belong to you, Chu Xiu. It belongs to the holy sect." The news of the sect master's reincarnation has spread in the pugilistic world. As long as the devil master is alive, the sect master might appear at any time. However, you're going to Kunlun Mountain. You're crossing the line. Moreover, who are you to ascend Kunlun Mountain? Are you the successor of the hidden devil tribe or the leader? Usually, we don't object when you raise this banner. But now, you want to make it real. Have you asked for our opinion? Qin Chao coughed first. He stood up and said, "Chu Xiu, we're not trying to stop you from ascending Kunlun Mountain. However, this matter needs to be made clear. Who are you to ascend Kunlun Mountain? In fact, this is for your own good. If the sect master appears and sees that Kunlun Mountain has already been occupied, he'll vent his anger on you. Wouldn't that be awkward? Who am I to ascend Kunlun Mountain?" Chu Xiu looked around at the people present and said slowly in a low voice, "My bloodline was in charge of the war between the moon-worshipping cult and the demonic path. We joined hands with the moon-worshipping cult to raise the prestige of the demonic path. However, that war was not the home ground of my Yinma bloodline. Later, the Chunyang Dao sect joined hands with the Sabodhi monastery to set off another war between the righteous path and the devil path. It was also me who gathered many forces and won the war. Last time, the Dao sect joined hands with the world's righteous path to destroy the foundation of the devil path in northern Yen. It was also me who persuaded the forces of the Donghai martial world to fight against the alliance of the righteous path, forcing the troops of eastern Qi to retreat. May I ask everyone, where are you at this time? Where are all of you? In the current world, in the current Jianghu, the prestige of the hidden devil tribe was raised by me, Chu Xiu. It is also me, Chu Xiu, who is suppressing it. You ask me what identity I will ascend Kunlun Mountain. Then I will tell you that I will ascend Kunlun Mountain as the leader of the entire hidden devil tribe. I will raise the banner of the holy sect and stand in the Jianghu. If the sect master is here, I will help him take charge of the holy sect, preserve the foundation, and wait for the sect master to return. If the sect master is not here..." Chu Xiu looked around and looked at everyone. "If the sect master is not here, I will be the devil master of the holy sect." As soon as he said this, everyone present was stunned. Even Mei Qinglian and the others did not expect that Chu Xiu would say such arrogant words in public. The meaning of his words was very clear. He wanted to enter Kunlun Mountain as the leader of the Kunlun devil cult. If Dugu Weiwei was here, then he would only be in charge temporarily. When Dugu Weiwei appeared, he would naturally offer the entire Kunlun Mountain to him. But if Dugu Weiwei was not here, then the Kunlun Mountain would be under him, Chu Xiu, and he, Chu Xiu, would be the new devil master. Ever since Dugu Weiwei's death, many prominent figures of the fiend path had appeared in the pugilistic world. However, whether it was the 9 Heavens Mountain's 5 great heavenly devils or the current Yi Shaonan, none of them dared to compare themselves to Dugu Weiwei. However, it was clear that Chu Xiu intended to do so. How audacious! Chu Xiu, you're being presumptuous. Situ Chi was stunned for a moment before he pointed a finger at Chu Xiu and shouted. Although Qin Chaoxian and the others did not say anything, it was clear that they were shocked by Chu Xiu's words. Si Wuya and the others did not understand how great Dugu Weiwei's influence was 500 years ago. However, Si Wuya was puzzled. Chu Xiu's attitude was a little too forceful. It was so forceful that it was indescribable. It was as though he had been prepared to say these words since the beginning. Chu Xiu sneered and said, "Presumptuous? The sect master isn't here. No one in this world will stop you from calling yourself the Fiend Lord. No one will stop you from ascending Kunlun Mountain either. If you don't agree, fine. If any of you dares to ascend Kunlun Mountain, I'll call him the Fiend Lord. Situ Chi, do you dare?" Situ Chi was at a loss for words. Truth be told, he did not dare to do so. He knew very well what ascending Kunlun Mountain meant. Although the righteous path of the pugilistic world was unconcerned, if the righteous path of the pugilistic world reacted in the future, whoever stood on Kunlun Mountain would become a target for the righteous path of the pugilistic world to attack. Moreover, it was not limited to the righteous path of the pugilistic world. Even among the fiend path of the fiend path, there were only a few who were qualified to ascend Kunlun Mountain and call themselves the Fiend Lord. Therefore, Situ Chi very awkwardly realized that after careful consideration, excluding Yi Shaonan, the only one who was qualified to do so was Chu Xiu. Looking at Situ Chi and the others, Chu Xiu sneered and said, "Ever since the sacred religion was destroyed, the fiend path has risen. My fiend path of the fiend path has declined to the point where we didn't even dare to show our faces. In the past, the 5 great fiends of the 9 Heavens Mountain gathered at the 9 Heavens Mountain to carry the banner of the fiend path. Now, I, Chu Xiu, dare to erect the fiend creation banner at the peak of Kunlun Mountain. And you? You're as timid as a mouse. You only dare to secretly trip up your own people and play tricks. You don't even dare to go to the Temple of Great Light to spit. A bunch of trash. The fiend path of the fiend path doesn't need trash like this. This time, I'll kill whoever dares to stop me. Just treat it as cleaning up the sect for my fiend path." Situ Chi's expression immediately changed when he heard these words. He had never doubted Chu Xiu's killing intent. But the problem was, would he, Chu Xiu, dare to kill the remaining experts of the Ima clan? Moreover, from the moment Chu Xiu appeared until now, his attitude was extremely tough, so tough that it was a little strange. Moreover, they seemed to have forgotten something. Chapter 1047. Chu Xiu's unyielding attitude exceeded Situ Chi and the others' expectations. Situ Chi was rendered speechless by Chu Xiu's words. Si Wuya could not help but frown when he saw Situ Chi's reaction. Situ Chi felt as though he had met his nemesis when he met Chu Xiu. He could not even muster a retort. They were supposed to question Chu Xiu, but now, it was Chu Xiu who was questioning them. It was laughable. If he did not need to recruit more people to his side, he would not have chosen to work with a piece of trash like Situ Chi. Logically speaking, if rules were useful, there would not be so much killing in the martial world. In the end, one would still have to solve their problems with fists and swords. Si Wuya stepped forward and said in a deep voice, "Chu Xiu, your words are laughable. You are you, and the fiend path is the fiend path. If you could become the fiend master with your strength, Yi Xiaonan would have gone to Kunlun a long time ago. The lurking devil progeny won't tolerate your recklessness, and we won't agree to it as well. If you insist on going your own way today, we won't yield even if you're strong enough. We can only join forces and defend the last shred of the fiend path's rules. When Qin Chaoxian heard Si Wuya's words, he sensed that something was amiss. It would be understandable if the others had this attitude, but why are you people from 800 years ago talking so much? Although you're from the fiend path as well, this matter concerns the Kunlun devil cult. Rules and no rules. Why are you so agitated? However, before Qin Chao could react, Chu Xiu had already calmly nodded his head and said, "So much nonsense. In the end, aren't we still going to make a move? You should have done this earlier. Why did you have to resort to so many tricks? If you have a death wish, come at me." Si Wuya took out an object covered in fiend veins that looked like a wine flask. He shouted at Qin Chaoxian and the others, "Everyone, Chu Xiu is stubborn. We can't just sit here and wait for our deaths." They were allowed to go up to Kunlun Mountain just like that. Where were the rules of the devil path? Even if the sect master appears in the future, how will we have the face to face him? As soon as Si Wuya finished speaking, Situ Chi and the others immediately forced some of their blood into the demonic sky-devouring kettle. In an instant, the demonic sky-devouring pot unleashed a terrifying power. The surrounding laws of the world began to change under the demonic might of the pot. Qin Chaoxian and the others didn't know how to react. Why did they suddenly start fighting? Who were they going to help? Right now, they were standing on the opposite side of Chu Xiu. They couldn't possibly help Chu Xiu, right? There was a flaw in Si Wuya's demonic heaven-devouring pot. The devil veins on it were slightly damaged. He had to use the true fire and the blood of a soul refinement realm cultivator as a catalyst to repair the damage caused by the devil veins. Si Wuya had already calculated this beforehand. Each of the cultivators on his side would provide some of their blood essence. It would be enough to repair the damage caused by the demonic heaven-devouring pot without harming their combat strength. However, the demonic heaven-devouring pot was not at its peak yet. Someone had yet to make a move. There were only a few people present. Si Wuya could easily guess who had yet to make a move. He was about to turn around and ask, but before he could do so, he felt an extreme sharpness and murderous aura surging toward him. A blade that was shaped like a crescent moon slashed toward him. The primal chi of heaven and earth exploded in its wake. Chu Wuji. Si Wuya bellowed. Black mist rose before him. The howls of a demonic ghost resounded in the air. 90% of his attention was focused on controlling the demonic heaven-devouring pot. If he made a move hastily, he would not be able to block Chu Wuji's well-planned attack. The moon blade pierced the black mist. Moonlight and the sharp murderous aura converged. Not only did it tear the demonic ghost apart, but it also caused him to spit out a mouthful of blood. He staggered backward. He did not dare to let his guard down. If he did, the demonic heaven-devouring pot would lose its effect. Situ Chi and the others looked at Chu Wuji in shock. They did not expect Chu Wuji to betray them at this critical moment. Situ Chi had felt something was amiss before this, but he could not pinpoint what it was. Now, he finally realized that Chu Wuji's presence had been shockingly low since the beginning. Their original plan was for Situ Chi to step forward and point out that Chu Xiu's actions were against the rules. Then, Chu Wuji would step forward and criticize Chu Xiu for being cold and indifferent. Finally, Si Wuya would step forward and rally Qin Chaoxian and the others to fight Chu Xiu. This would split the lurking devil progeny into two factions. It did not matter if they could defeat Chu Xiu. As long as Si Wuya could stop Chu Xiu, Qin Chaoxian and the others would fight Chu Xiu. Then, they would fall out with Chu Xiu. At that time, they would have no choice but to stand on Si Wuya's side. Si Wuya's plan was perfect. Si Wuya had it all planned out. Previously, he had failed to touch Chu Xiu's foundation. However, if he succeeded this time, he would be able to pull Qin Chaoxian and the others to his side. Although Qin Chaoxian and the others would not respect him, they would still form an alliance to deal with Chu Xiu. Who would have thought that Chu Xiu's side would be so unyielding? They had fallen out with Chu Wuji before Chu Wuji even had a chance to fight. They did not expect that Chu Wuji, who had been neglected, would betray them at this critical moment. Chu Wuji whistled and said with a chuckle, "I've met the people from the Ghost King's sect before. They're useless. I didn't expect the Ghost King's sect's martial path from 800 years ago to be so redeeming. How are they still alive?" Qin Chaoxian and the others were baffled. They were the most confused. Both Chu Xiu and Si Wuya had their own plans. They were the only ones who were led along. Did Chu Wuji not fall out with Chu Xiu? Why would he attack Si Wuya now? A fierce expression appeared in Si Wuya's eyes. He glared at Chu Wuji and said, "You've never fallen out with Chu Xiu since the beginning. You're the one who set this up, aren't you?" Chu Wuji spread his hands and said, "I've guessed it, but it's too late. Why would I fall out with Chu Xiu at a time like this? If he becomes the leader of the lurking devil progeny, I'll have a higher status in the future, and I won't have to worry about him. Why wouldn't I do it? Why must you fall out with him?" Chu Xiu said tonelessly, "Si Wuya, you think too highly of yourself. I fell out with Senior Chu only to put on a show for the noble path so that they won't disturb me when I return to Kunlun. In the end, all of you came knocking on my door. You're just seeking death. To fend off foreign aggression, we must first settle our internal affairs. Do any of you still remember how our sect rose to prominence in the pugilistic world? Our first step isn't to deal with the sects of the noble path. Instead, it's to deal with the short-sighted members of the fiend path. What's the use of people like you other than holding us back? So, all of you can die." As soon as Chu Xiu finished speaking, he charged at Si Wuya. These people from 800 years ago had caused him a lot of trouble. The people from the noble path had instigated the eastern Qi to attack the northern Yen, causing a war between the noble path and fiend path. The people from the fiend path had been adding insult to injury from the shadows. Chu Xiu's patience had reached its limit. This time, Chu Xiu could not be bothered to endure any longer. He wanted to use this opportunity to kill them all at once. Shang Tianliang followed behind Chu Xiu. He was intrigued by the heaven-devouring demonic gourd. This thing could affect the changes in the laws of heaven and earth. Although it was not fully unleashed, it had already affected him. If he allowed this thing to unleash its full power, who knew, it could change the laws of an area. Perhaps, not even the mystic illuminating realm cultivators could control heaven and earth. Chu Xiu, kid, I'll leave the rest to you. I'm very interested in this wine gourd. I'm going to play with it. As soon as Shang Tianliang finished speaking, he charged at the heaven-devouring demonic gourd. With a wave of his hand, he tore through the boundless devil qi. Chu Xiu did not bother with him. He did not feel any pressure dealing with Si Wuya and the others. He did not need Shang Tianliang's help. Chu Xiu held the evil moon saber in his hand. Boundless blood energy gathered on the saber. The crimson blood moon distorted the space around it and devoured all energy. Si Wuya grunted. 3 ferocious-looking evil spirits appeared around him. He performed hand seals and swallowed the 3 ferocious-looking evil spirits into his stomach in just a blink of an eye. In just an instant, countless black devil veins appeared on Si Wuya's face. His aura skyrocketed as well. It was evil, brutal, and terrifying. Black mist swirled around Si Wuya and formed a peculiar formation beneath his feet. Si Wuya, who was in the middle of the formation, threw his head back and roared. His expression was as ferocious as an evil ghost's, and his aura had risen to its peak. Cultivators from the same generation as Si Wuya, such as Daoist blood Wyrm, looked at Si Wuya in shock. The Ghost King sect's martial path was more sinister and bizarre. Hence, when the Ghost King sect's cultivators fought their enemies, they would usually use all sorts of sinister techniques to wear their opponents down. However, when Si Wuya faced Chu Xiu, he had used 2 of the Ghost King sect's secret techniques. He was going all out and seemed as though he was going all out. How much did he value Chu Xiu? In truth, they did not know that Si Wuya was thinking of fleeing when his plan failed. Putting aside the fact that he valued Chu Xiu, he was thinking of running away. However, based on the stance that Chu Xiu and the others were going, if they did not fight with their lives on the line, they would not even have the chance to escape. Chu Xiu's saber did not budge at all when he saw Si Wuya's stance. However, as soon as the saber descended, heaven and earth seemed to have changed. Time seemed to have stopped, and space seemed to have frozen. It was as though the only thing that could move in this world was Chu Xiu's saber. It was an invincible saber. When the saber intent from the break formula slashed down, everything, be it the formation or the evil ghost's incarnation, was shattered by the saber. The devil veins on Si Wuya's face disappeared. A line of blood appeared on his forehead. In the next moment, his body was split into 2 and fell to the ground. Chu Xiu instinctively flicked the non-existent blood off his saber. He said indifferently, "What's the point of all this fancy stuff?" Chapter 1048. Si Wuya had overestimated himself. More accurately, he had underestimated Chu Xiu. Situ Chi and the others had fought Chu Xiu before. They knew how terrifying Chu Xiu was. In a one-on-one fight, they did not even have the courage to challenge Chu Xiu. They could only muster the courage to attack him if they had the numbers advantage. Back when they were overseas, even Bailey Paubing, the East Sea's greatest general, could not withstand more than a few blows from Chu Xiu, let alone Si Wuya, who had been severely injured by Chu Wuji's sneak attack. Would Si Wuya dare to fight Chu Xiu head-on? He might as well burn his blood essence and run for his life. It was as Chu Xiu had said, fancy moves were useless. The others were dumbfounded when they saw Si Wuya killed with a single strike. Previously, they thought that they might be able to wrestle with Chu Xiu by relying on their advantage in numbers. Now that Si Wuya had paid the price with his life, they realized that some people could not be measured by numbers. The difficulty of dealing with Chu Xiu was no less than dealing with a heaven and earth and lightning realm expert. Chu Xiu sheathed his saber and turned to look at Daoist blood Wyrm. Daoist blood Wyrm trembled in fear when he saw Chu Xiu's emotionless gaze. He cried out, "Official Chu, spare my life. It's all Si Wuya's doing. I really don't want to be your enemy, Official Chu." It was slightly embarrassing to beg for mercy in the middle of a battle. This was especially true for some martial experts. Most of the time, they would rather fight with their lives on the line or flee than beg for mercy in the middle of a battle. However, Daoist blood Wyrm did not care about that. He was not from a major sect 800 years ago. He was an itinerant cultivator who had climbed his way to his current position. Something like face had already been thrown away 800 years ago. Begging for mercy was nothing to him. Chu Xiu looked at him expressionlessly. In response to Daoist blood Wyrm, the great darkness heavenly demon god Dharma idol unleashed a world-destroying flame. Seeing that Chu Xiu had already made up his mind to kill them all, Daoist blood dragon roared, "Chu Xiu! I'll fight it out with you." As soon as Daoist blood Jiao's voice rang out, blood qi filled the air around his body and his flesh swelled. His blood qi condensed into scales and a single horn, giving him the appearance of a fiendish demon. His aura also resembled that of a monstrous beast as he used his body to resist the world-extinguishing flames and charged towards Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu took a step forward, and the wind and clouds suddenly changed. The ground beneath his feet couldn't withstand his powerful force, and cracks appeared on it. He punched out, and in the entire world, only he reigned supreme. The punch that contained extreme power seemed to detonate the entire world, emitting a deafening explosion. Daoist blood Jiao immediately howled in pain as one of his arms exploded into a bloody mist from Chu Xiu's punch. As the second punch landed, Daoist blood Jiao let out a dragon's roar and the dragon scales around his body became even more solid. However, it was still useless. Chu Xiu's punch had directly caused Daoist blood Jiao's blood qi to explode, causing a large amount of blood to spurt out. Just as Chu Xiu was about to finish off Daoist blood Jiao with another punch, Jianghu appeared out of nowhere and hurriedly said, "Leave it to me. This old brat's blood qi smells like a monstrous beast. I've never tried a mixed blood before, so let me swallow his blood qi and see what it tastes like." As soon as Jianghu finished speaking, crimson rays flashed around him and enveloped Daoist blood Jiao. In just a blink of an eye, Daoist blood Jiao's blood was sucked dry, and he fell to the ground as a dried corpse. Jianghu pursed his lips. Although he did not say anything, it was clear that Daoist blood Jiao's blood was not as powerful as he had imagined. Chu Xiu did not continue attacking. This was because the cultivators Wuxia brought with him had been killed by Chu Xiu's subordinates. They thought they had the advantage in numbers after bringing Qin Chaoxian and the others with them. However, in truth, none of Chu Xiu's subordinates, including Lu Fengxian and Mei Qinglian who had just entered the true fire spirit refinement realm, were easy opponents. In the end, Situ Qi and Kuan Mo were the only ones left on the battlefield. When Situ Qi saw what happened to Wuxia and the others, his heart turned cold. He smiled bitterly and said, "Official Chu, I admit defeat. I'm willing to live in seclusion in the mountains and never step foot in the world again. I'll spend the rest of my life here." He had argued with Chu Xiu many times and lost every time. Now, he was truly afraid. He no longer dared to argue with Chu Xiu. Kuan Mo said, "I'm willing to live in seclusion in the western regions as well. I'll never step foot in the Central Plains warriors again." At this time, Qin Chaoxian and the others also tried to persuade him, "Sir Chu, why don't we just let this matter go? The two of them are already in such a state, they don't have the qualifications to compete with Sir Chu in this life. Please spare them this time." Qin Chaoxian did not participate in the earlier battle. He had only watched from the side. He was not an idiot. Naturally, he knew Wuxia and the others were using them. Hence, when Wuxia was killed, none of them made a sound. However, Situ Qi and the others were different. They were veterans of the lurking devil progeny. Putting aside their good and bad relationship with Qin Chaoxian and the others, they had known each other for decades or even centuries. It was only natural that they had to treat them differently. Moreover, Qin Chaoxian and the others also had a subconscious thought in their hearts, that was, they did not want to see Chu Xiu brutally kill the people of the Yinma clan here. This would make them have the mentality of a fox mourning the death of a rabbit. Chu Xiu shook his head with an indifferent expression on his face and said, "Everyone, there's something you don't understand. It's not that I, Chu Xiu, don't want to spare anyone. It's just that people have to be responsible for their own actions." What a simple saying. It's just like how the monks of the Great Radiance Temple always say, "Repent and become a Buddha." It's all bullsh*t. A hint of killing intent appeared on Chu Xiu's face. Since when did the fiend path become as hypocritical as those monks? Do you want to leave the Jianghu? Leave your life behind first. As soon as Chu Xiu finished speaking, the Buddha and demon form behind him rose. Vairocana formed the colorless fixed palm mudra and completely sealed Situ Qi's figure within it. In the third eye of the Mahakala demon form, boundless apocalyptic fire bloomed and completely enveloped Situ Qi's figure within it. Situ Qi roared angrily at the moment of life and death. Boundless qi and blood burned around him as he wanted to fight with Chu Xiu. However, before he could fight with his life on the line, he was shocked to find that the burning qi and blood around him had begun to disperse uncontrollably and fuse with the apocalyptic fire, causing the apocalyptic fire to burn even more intensely. Jianghu, who was standing at the side, curled his lips and felt rather displeased. This was because he had discovered that Chu Xiu's attainment in the blood demon power was actually stronger than his. To put it more accurately, Yi Xiu's attainment in a certain aspect had even surpassed his own. For example, he had not noticed when Chu Xiu had fused the power of the blood demon power into the apocalyptic fire. In less than 3 breaths' time, Situ Qi had already been burnt to ashes by the apocalyptic fire. The moment he attacked, Kuan Mo immediately tried to escape. A blackish-purple flame bloomed around his body and his entire figure actually fused with the flames. Strangely, he began to dissipate. However, Shang Tianliang simply laughed coldly and waved his hand. The area within a radius of several miles was directly confined by him. Kun Mo's figure was directly pulled out of this space and then exploded with a punch. Qin Chaoxian and the others were dumbfounded as they watched Situ Chi and Kun Mo being killed by Chu Xiu's people without any hesitation. Perhaps it was only now that they realized that compared to them, Chu Xiu was already a person of two different realms, whether it was in terms of martial arts or in terms of power. Previously, they had been acting according to the rules of the hidden devil lineage. But now, it seemed that the hidden devil lineage also had to change the rules, or even change the world. Chu Xiu turned his gaze to Qin Chaoxian and the others and said coldly, "Sect leader Qin, you were bewitched this time, so I don't blame you. However, now that the times have changed, my hidden devil lineage will also change. 500 years ago, when the sacred religion was destroyed, my devil lineage was suppressed for a whole 500 years. Every dog has its day, and now it is time for my devil lineage to rise. What era is it now? Heroes are coming forth in large numbers and experts are gathering. It is a turbulent era of great competition. If you don't fight, you will die. There is not much time left for my hidden devil lineage." Just like before, everyone fought for themselves, thinking of their own interests first, their own survival. A loose alliance can't even compare to the moon-worshipping cult. How can we compete with the righteous path? Chu Xiu pointed to the summit of Kunlun Mountain and said in a deep voice, "Today, I, Chu Xiu, wish to erect the creation heavenly devil flag at the summit of Kunlun Mountain and reopen the rootless sacred flame, so that my sacred religion can once again stand tall in Jianghu." Therefore, at present, the entire hidden devil lineage could not tolerate even half a voice of denial. I will give you all two choices. Either, like the sacred religion in the past, you all return to the devil sect, respect me, and listen to my orders. Or, from now on, become a rogue cultivator. Don't act in the name of the Kunlun devil cult. The next time we meet, life or death will not be discussed. Under Chu Xiu's gaze, Qin Chaoxian and the others instantly felt the pressure increase. At the same time, they cursed in their hearts. Is this a choice? If they chose to become rogue cultivators, it was equivalent to cutting off their own relationship with the Kunlun devil cult. When they next met, as long as they had a conflict with Chu Xiu would 100% kill them. Just look at Situ Chi's appearance just now. Chu Xiu had never been lenient when it came to them. His attitude was even more ruthless than that of an enemy. Unless they chose to join the moon-worshipping cult after leaving and find a stronger backer than Chu Xiu, they could only withdraw from Jianghu. Qin Chaoxian revealed a bitter smile, cupped his hands towards Chu Xiu, and said in a deep voice, "I. This subordinate greets Lord." Qin Chaoxian chose to surrender because he did not know that the moon-worshipping cult would not accept him. Moreover, in the entire devil path, he could not find a stronger force than Chu Xiu and the moon-worshipping cult. However, Qin Chaoxian only addressed Chu Xiu as Lord and did not address him as sect leader. The current Chu Xiu might be the master of the Kunlun devil cult, but he was not the sect leader. He, Chu Xiu, could not replace Dugu Weiwei's position. Chapter 1049. Chu Xiu didn't mind Qin Chaoxian's way of addressing him. Dugu Weiwei's influence was too great, and with Chu Xiu's current strength, he wanted to replace Dugu Weiwei and become the new cult master of the demonic sect. Even if Chu Xiu said so himself, he would become a laughing stock if word of this got out. But in the future, if Dugu Weiwei didn't appear and he reached the heaven and earth elemental realm, who would dare to laugh at him if he called himself the leader of the devil cult? Titles were obtained through fighting, not by others. As Qin Chaoxian was the first to admit defeat, the rest of the people present also lowered their heads and addressed him as Lord. The Scarlet Devil's sect could be said to be the strongest neutral force in the entire hidden devil lineage. Although they didn't have many people, each of them was the best of the best. So when they saw that the Scarlet Devil's sect admitted defeat, they naturally chose to follow suit. As for what they thought, it didn't matter whether they were convinced or not. As long as they chose to surrender now, Chu Xiu wouldn't let them off if they made any strange moves in the future. All he wanted was obedience. Even if they couldn't wait to swallow Chu Xiu alive, it was fine as long as they obeyed his orders. Looking at the snow-covered Kunlun mountain, Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "Let's go to Kunlun." Everyone present stared at Kunlun mountain and stepped on the ruins of Dragon Gate Pass. Step by step, they climbed up Kunlun mountain. With the strength of Chu Xiu and the others, they could reach the top of the mountain in less than 10 breaths. But at this moment, they were climbing the stairs step by step. Everyone was silent, but their hearts were full of emotions. This was the holy land of the devil cult and the most glorious moment of the devil cult. At that time, no matter if you were the abbot of a Buddhist temple or the leader of a Taoist sect, as long as you came to Kunlun mountain, you had to walk on this path respectfully step by step. But 500 years ago, it was also them who joined hands to attack Kunlun mountain. The entire Kunlun mountain was covered in blood. Even after 500 years, the traces of the great battle could still be seen. Even the black scars on the stairs seemed to be formed by the condensation of dried blood. At this time, Chu Xiu suddenly said, "Old Lu, why do you think the sect master used Kunlun mountain as our holy sect's headquarters?" The others also looked at Lu Jianghu. Not only was Chu Xiu confused, but they were also very confused. That was because the Kunlun devil cult's location was not considered good. Although Kunlun mountain was a place where the dragon vein gathered and had good feng shui, Kunlun mountain was too far away from the central plains. There was no one around, so it was extremely inconvenient to transmit information or send reinforcements. Therefore, when the Kunlun devil cult was still around, most of the halls of the Kunlun devil cult only set up their headquarters on Kunlun mountain and left some people to guard it. Most of them set up branches in the pugilistic world. Hence, the strength of the branches was usually stronger than the headquarters on Kunlun mountain. For example, hall masters like Lu Jianghu sometimes spent more time in the branches than in the headquarters. There was no other way. If everyone stayed on Kunlun mountain and something happened in the pugilistic world that needed people to deal with urgently, even if the news could be transmitted quickly through the formation, there would be no way for people to rush over quickly. Lu Jianghu chuckled and said, "You don't say, I do know a little about this. The reason is absolutely beyond your imagination." This time, Lu Jianghu did not keep them in suspense. He said directly, "The reason is very simple. It's because Kunlun mountain is the highest peak in the world. The sect leader once said, 'Stand high and see far.' Most importantly, the sect leader could not tolerate someone standing higher than him." Everyone present was silent. If this kind of words were said by others, it would be arrogant and egotistical. But when it came from Dugu Weiwei's mouth, it was domineering. While they were talking, everyone walked to the top of the mountain. Although the whole of Kunlun mountain was covered with snow, the top of Kunlun mountain was as warm as spring. 500 years ago, it should have looked like a paradise on earth. Of course, now, the whole of Kunlun mountain was only a pile of broken walls. The war 500 years ago had completely destroyed the Kunlun devil cult. All the major sects had taken away all the valuable things from the Kunlun devil cult. Even the formation was destroyed. The only formation left on the top of Kunlun mountain was the 6 paths of Buddha rebirth formation of the Sabodhi monastery, which was used to seal the rootless sacred flame. "Where is the rootless sacred flame?" Chu Xiu asked Lu Jianghu. Lu Jianghu pointed above his head. "At the top of Kunlun mountain." Everyone went directly to the highest peak of Kunlun mountain. What they saw was a large formation that emitted a golden Buddhist light. It was a huge and powerful formation that was hundreds of feet wide and surrounded by countless Sanskrit characters. In the center of the formation, a grayish-white flame flickered. It was only the size of a thumb, and it looked like it would be extinguished in the next moment. Behind Chu Xiu, Chu Wuji said with an ugly expression, "This 6 paths of Buddha rebirth formation is the strongest formation of the Sabodhi monastery." In order to set up this formation, the Sabodhi monastery paid the price of an ethereal enlightenment realm sadhu and 6 true fire spirit refinement realms sadhu to set up this formation. The formation is directly rooted in the dragon vein at the bottom. As long as the dragon vein is still there, it can provide the formation with an endless supply of power. It can be said that this formation uses the power of the rootless sacred flame to seal the rootless sacred flame. Hearing Chu Wuji's explanation, Chu Xiu was slightly moved. Just how afraid was the Sabodhi monastery of the Kunlun devil cult to pay such a huge price to seal the rootless sacred flame? The Sabodhi monastery did not have as many complicated positions as the Great Light Temple. Other than the abbot, everyone else was of equal status. However, those who were able to become ascetic monks were all old monks with great perseverance and extraordinary strength. They were willing to pay the price of crippling their cultivation just to seal the rootless sacred fire. Chu Xiu simply did not know how to describe it. Yuan Ji. Yes, sir. Master Yuan Ji immediately moved in front of Chu Xiu from the crowd. Can you break this formation? Hearing Chu Xiu say this, Master Yuan Ji almost cried. Haven't you heard? This is a powerful formation set up by the Sabodhi monastery at the cost of a heaven and earth arcane master and 6 true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouses. If I can break it, I would probably be the world's #1 formation grandmaster. However, under Chu Xiu's intense gaze, Master Yuan Ji bit the bullet and nodded. Among the formation Dao manuals left behind by the sky-weeping demon Venerate, there are quite a number of formation techniques that are set up specifically for Buddhist formation techniques. I can try it out. However, I'm not strong enough. I'll need your help when the time comes. Chu Xiu waved his hand. You do it. Master Yuan Ji nodded. He took out a large pile of formation-breaking materials from the secret space box and started setting up the formation. Chu Xiu never mistreated his subordinates. The formation materials in Master Yuan Ji's hands were all of the highest quality. He did not lack any of them. After all, Chu Xiu had so many subordinates, but Master Yuan Ji was the only one who could do well in the formation. After a while, Master Yuan Ji set up 3 formations in 3 different directions of the 6 paths of Buddha's rebirth formation. After activating the formation, Master Yuan Ji immediately said, Official Chu, take out the demonic creation flag. Use the demonic chi of the demonic creation flag to provide power to fight against the power of the dragon vein. Chu Xiu nodded his head. He unfurled the huge flag that carried a monstrous demonic aura and stood in the middle of the formation. In an instant, the monstrous demonic aura clashed with the Buddhist light. The entire peak of Kunlun Mountain was filled with raging winds and clouds, and the might was boundless. Official Chu. Everyone, let's do it together and pour our energy into the formation. As Master Yuan Ji shouted, Chu Xiu, Shang Tianliang, Chu Wuji, and the other true fire spirit refinement realm martial artists quickly poured their energy into the formation. Things like formations were not eternal. At the very least, the materials used to set up the formation would be damaged. 500 years had passed, and the foundation of the 6 paths of reincarnation formation had been damaged to a certain extent. Under the powerful strength of Chu Xiu and the others, the formation began to crack bit by bit. The Buddhist light and Sanskrit were weakening, and the demonic chi was dissipating. Finally, with a loud bang, the formation was completely broken. The rootless sacred flame that was originally shrouded in the formation was only a grayish-white flame the size of a thumb, looking extremely fragile. But after the 6 paths of reincarnation formation was broken, the rootless sacred flame once again extracted the power of the dragon vein and began to change. From the size of a thumb, it became a towering pillar of fire that was more than 100 feet tall. Moreover, its color was not grayish-white, but a strange silver. It looked extremely pure. It actually looked a little similar to the true fire condensed by Chu Xiu when he refined his body with true fire. Lu Jiang, he sighed. I see it again. The rootless sacred flame has actually contributed a lot to our holy sect. In the past, all the formations in our holy sect were built with the power of the rootless sacred flame as the foundation. As for the weapons, they were all forged by the Skycry demon Venerable using the rootless saint flames. Although I don't use weapons, it'd be a waste if I didn't take them. Hence, I asked the Skycry demon venerable to forge a divine weapon for me. Sadly, I don't know where it went. Qin Chaoxian and the others had heard of Lu Jianghe's name, but they had never really come into close contact with him. Now, it seemed that this legendary blood demon hall master, who was second only to the 4 demon venerables 500 years ago, was a little cheap. He didn't use any weapons and still asked others to forge it for him. Demon Venerable Skycry could be considered to have a good temper if he didn't fall out with him. Chu Xiu didn't care about Lu Jianghe's nonsense. He unfolded the demonic creation flag and placed it beside the rootless sacred flame. Instantly, a powerful demonic chi soared into the rootless sacred flame. The burning demonic chi pillar of fire once again soared into the sky. From today onwards, I, Chu Xiu, shall re-establish the demon sect. The sacred flame shall not be extinguished, and the demonic path shall exist forever. At this moment, everyone, including Lu Jianghe, changed their usual unruly manner and shouted with a solemn expression, "The demonic path shall exist forever." Chapter 1050. The rootless sacred flame took root in the dragon vein and affected the world. The moment the rootless sacred flame was unsealed, many people noticed it. The first to notice it were the people from Sabodhi Monastery. The great 6 paths of Buddha rebirth formation was set up by Sabodhi Monastery, so they had a mysterious connection with it. In the stone forest behind Sabodhi Monastery, a statue suddenly moved. A withered arm stretched out from the statue. It was not a statue, but a monk who had been sitting there for many years. Dust covered his entire body. As time passed, it formed a layer of hard shell, making him look like a statue. Rama's figure appeared in front of the old monk, who was covered in dust. He bowed and said, "Master Bukong, you have come out of seclusion." As the abbot of Sabodhi Monastery, even though Rama's seniority in Sabodhi Monastery was very low, there were not many people who could make him bow. However, Rama had taken the initiative to bow. It was obvious how high the status of this old monk called Bukong was in Sabodhi Monastery. Bukong monk picked his ears and shook off a pile of dust. He said in a strange voice, "The great 6 paths of Buddha rebirth formation has been unsealed. The rootless sacred flame has reignited the world. Is Duga Weiwei back?" Rama shook his head and said, "No, it's a little complicated." As he spoke, Rama told monk Bukong everything that had happened from the annihilation of the Kunlun demon sect until now. He spoke from noon until the sky turned dark. That's right, Rama talked about everything from the Kunlun devil cult's destruction until now. This was because Bukong monk had existed for 500 years. Currently, the oldest person in the Jianghu should be the old celestial master. When he was young, the Kunlun devil cult was at its peak. He had also seen the battle that destroyed the Kunlun devil cult with his own eyes. However, even when the Kunlun devil cult was destroyed, the old celestial master did not have the strength he had now. He was far from the top of the celestial master mansion. As for this monk Bukong before them, he was an existence who had truly participated in the battle to annihilate the Kunlun demon sect. In fact, he had even exchanged blows with the 4 demon lords back then. As for the 6 paths of Buddha rebirth formation, he was the one who had personally set it up. Back then, in order to set up the 6 paths of Stupa rebirth formation, the Sabodhi Zen monastery paid the price of crippling the cultivation of 1 arcane practitioner of heaven and earth and 6 true fire spirit refinement realm experts. The 6 true fire spirit refinement realm martial artists died not long after they set up the formation. Only the monk Bukong remained. He cultivated an extremely special secret technique of the Sabodhi Zen monastery called the Undying Zen. The Undying Zen was not truly undying. Instead, at the brink of death, one would seal the last strand of vitality and true spirit of one's body and meditate for 100 years, bathing in the wind, frost, rain, and dew, borrowing the power of heaven and earth to reconstruct one's vitality. Therefore, in theory, as long as 100 years passed, one's vitality could be restored. However, the problem was that because the vitality and true spirit of the meditator were sealed, they were in a state of chaos. They did not know time and did not have consciousness. How could they wake up? If outsiders disturbed them, the meditators' efforts would be in vain and their vitality would be extinguished. Therefore, after so many years, 90% of the martial artists who cultivated the so-called undying Zen had actually become a true vegetable and would never wake up. The monk Bukong had meditated in the undying Zen for 500 years. Even the people of the Sabodhi Zen monastery thought that he would continue to sleep like the other martial artists of the Sabodhi Zen monastery. Actually, he had to thank Chu Xiu for being able to wake up this time. If Chu Xiu had not broken through the 6 paths of Buddha rebirth formation that he had personally set up and shook his mind, he probably would not have been able to wake up. After hearing Rama's words, the monk Bukong monk sighed and said, "The sacred flame has been reignited and the demonic path has also been revived. The pugilistic world is no longer peaceful. I would rather sleep for the rest of my life than see the chaotic pugilistic world shrouded in demonic might." In the Taoist master's residence, the old Taoist master, who was basking in the sun, suddenly sat up and looked to the west. Beside him, Zhang Qingzhen, who was meditating, was filled with Taoist aura. There were even traces of lightning flashing in the void. Sensing the old Taoist master's movements, Zhang Qingzhen opened his eyes and asked, "What's wrong, old Taoist master?" The old Taoist master gazed to the west and shook his head gently. "I'm afraid the pugilistic world is no longer peaceful. It's not easy for me to live so long. Do I really have to witness the emergence of 2 generations of the Kunlun devil cult? Sigh, why can't I be more careful?" In the moon-worshipping cult, Yi Shaonan, who was refining the Khanate demon seed, clearly sensed something. He opened his eyes and looked to the west. However, he immediately closed his eyes and continued refining the demon seed. To Yi Shaonan, the Kunlun devil cult was just a symbol and did not represent anything. He admired Dugu Weiwei's achievements, but he was also confident that he could reach Dugu Weiwei's level in the future. Therefore, the Kunlun devil cult was just a symbol to him. What did it have to do with him if Chu Xiu or anyone else ignited the rootless sacred flame? To the current devil path, the Kunlun mountain was the devil path's holy land. Perhaps 500 years later, the moon-worshipping cult would also become the devil path's holy land. Because the rootless sacred flame had been reignited, almost all the supreme experts in the pugilistic world had sensed its aura. The rootless sacred flame was born in the dragon vein, and the dragon vein was a product of the power of heaven and earth. Therefore, the heaven and earth mysterious realm experts could sense it. They had heard the news that Chu Xiu was preparing to return to the Kunlun mountain. However, they did not expect that Chu Xiu would successfully ignite the rootless sacred flame. A few days later, the news about Chu Xiu had spread. There were both good and bad news. The hidden devil clan was in internal strife. Several true fire spirit refinement realm experts had died, as well as a group of other martial artists. It could be said that the number of devil path martial artists who had died in the hands of Chu Xiu was even more than those who had died in the hands of the righteous path martial artists. Most of the people were even secretly exclaiming that Chu Xiu was really ruthless. They were both from the devil path, and even from the hidden devil clan. However, he was merciless. As long as they stood on the opposite side of him, even if they had begged for mercy, he would still kill them. And thinking about it carefully, Chu Xiu was so ruthless when killing his own people. One could imagine his attitude towards the other righteous path sections. Even because of the recent news of Dugu Weiwei's reincarnation, some people even thought of Dugu Weiwei. It should be known that in the past, before the Kunlun devil cult dominated the Jianghu, Dugu Weiwei had once unified the devil path. At that time, the entire devil path was not allowed to have a second voice. Even a first-class devil path sect like the moon-worshipping cult could only carefully raise gu insects in Miaojiang. If they dared to speak out, they would either choose to submit to the Kunlun devil cult or be killed with a slap. Chu Xiu's actions were very similar to Dugu Weiwei's. In fact, everyone thought about it carefully. They had been looking for the reincarnation of Dugu Weiwei for so long. It seemed that Chu Xiu was the most similar to Dugu Weiwei in the Jianghu. However, everyone just thought about it. Everyone knew that it should be impossible. One was that Chu Xiu's age did not match. Dugu Weiwei's reincarnation should only be 18 years old now. Another was that Chu Xiu's way of doing things was like courting death. If he really was the reincarnation of Dugu Weiwei, he probably would not even have his memories. Even if Dugu Weiwei really had a reincarnation, it was impossible for him to be as high profile as Chu Xiu. Instead, he would be lying low in the dark, waiting for his strength to recover before considering other things. In any case, the devil path had lost a large number of warriors. This was a good thing for the righteous path of martial arts. However, there were also bad things. Chu Xiu occupied the Kunlun mountain, ignited the rootless sacred fire, raised the banner of the devil path, and rebuilt the Kunlun devil cult. This was simply a humiliation to the entire righteous path of martial arts. If it was during normal times, they would absolutely not allow such a thing to happen. But now, with the news of Dugu Weiwei's reincarnation, the matter of Chu Xiu could be ignored. The Kunlun mountain was just a symbol of the devil path, while Dugu Weiwei was an existence that could shroud the entire Jianghu in the shadow of the devil path. It was not too late to find the reincarnation of Dugu Weiwei first, and then deal with Chu Xiu. Anyway, in the eyes of all Jianghu people, Dugu Weiwei was a big problem. As for Chu Xiu, although he was troublesome, as long as they joined forces, they would still be able to deal with him. It was just that they would have to wait a little longer. These were all within Chu Xiu's expectations. When he climbed the Kunlun mountain, others would definitely react. It was only because of the situation of Dugu Weiwei's reincarnation that no one came to trouble him. As for how long this situation could last, Chu Xiu did not know, nor was he confident. Therefore, he had to increase his strength to a sufficient level before the righteous path of martial arts could react. At the top of the Kunlun mountain, next to the rootless sacred fire, Chu Xiu stood at the top of the mountain, looking at the place further west of the Kunlun mountain. That was the end of the western side of the Kunlun mountain range, where there was also the world's strongest sect, the Western Kunlun Heavenly Gate. Although the Heavenly Gate and the Devil Cult were both in the Kunlun mountain range, the Kunlun mountain range was too big. The entire Kunlun mountain range stretched for thousands of miles. The Kunlun Devil Cult was near the east, which was the starting point. It could also be said to be the dragon's head. The Heavenly Gate was the westernmost part of the Kunlun mountain range, which could be regarded as the dragon's tail. It was said that in the past, the height of the eastern and western Kunlun mountains was actually the same, but ever since Dugu Weiwei had gone to the Heavenly Gate, he had forcefully shaved off the peak of the Heavenly Gate by 1,000 feet, just so that no one could stand higher than him. Of course, this was said by Lu Jianghe. Chu Xiu felt that the other party was making it up. In his opinion, Dugu Weiwei should not be bored to such an extent. However, for the current Chu Xiu, the Heavenly Gate that had been flattened by Dugu Weiwei was a great disaster for him. There was no need to talk about the grudges between him and the Heavenly Gates. In the past, Dugu Weiwei could not tolerate the Heavenly Gates. Now that he had gone to the Kunlun realm, would the Heavenly Gates be able to tolerate him? After Jun Wuxian had been beaten back by Zhongshanxiu, it seemed that it had been a long time since the Heavenly Gate's divine general had appeared in the pugilistic world. Chu Xiu also hoped that there was some internal problem with the other party. Chu Xiu turned his gaze to the rootless sacred fire behind him. Now, he could not care so much. Improving his strength was the most important thing. Chapter 1051. Chu Xiu wasn't sure if the Elysium would come looking for trouble with him. He spent so much effort to climb up Kunlun Mountain, of course, not for the reputation of a demon master, but to gain the upper hand and improve his strength and prestige. Therefore, the first thing Chu Xiu did after climbing up Kunlun Mountain was to arrange for everyone to repair the demon sect. Not to restore it to the state 500 years ago, but at least it should be somewhat similar. And the second thing he was going to do was to refine the knife embryo obtained from the primitive demon cave. Although for martial arts, weapons were not the most important, a strong enough weapon could affect the situation of the battle. To the current Chu Xiu, ordinary divine weapons were no longer able to satisfy him. Only those legendary powerful weapons would be able to do so. The evil moon saber was an ancient demon weapon. Although it was strong enough, it was not his own weapon after all. The weapon spirit could not recognize him as its master. He could only suppress it for a period of time with the help of his inner demons. The compatibility between it and Chu Xiu was very low. Back then, when he was comprehending the saber intent of the break formula, Chu Xiu had seen the scene of Dugu Weiwei using listen to the spring rain in the illusion. That was truly a hardy and unstoppable move. Right now, if he could use the rootless sacred flame to hatch the knife embryo, it would be similar to the natural demon saber produced in the primitive demon cave, even if it was not as good as listen to the spring rain. Therefore, Chu Xiu directly looked for Lu Jianghe and asked, "Old Lu, how should I use the rootless sacred flame to refine the knife embryo?" Lu Jianghe looked at Chu Xiu with a very complicated gaze. "Do you think I am the kind of person who knows how to refine weapons?" Chu Xiu looked at Lu Jianghe with an unfriendly gaze. "Then last time you told me that this knife embryo can only be refined with the rootless sacred flame?" Lu Jianghe spread his hands innocently and said, "There's nothing wrong with what I said. Indeed, it can only be refined with the rootless sacred flame. As for how to refine it, how would I know?" Seeing that Chu Xiu was about to explode, Lu Jianghe hurriedly said, "Although I don't know how to refine this saber embryo, it's still easy to guess. This thing was in the shape of a saber, and it was born from heaven and earth. The rootless sacred flame is also born from heaven and earth. Why don't you give it a try? Throw this thing in and pour your own energy into it. Maybe you can refine it. This thing can also be tested." Lu Jianghe chuckled and said, "Anyway, that's what sect master did in the past. In the entire sacred church, the strongest in the art of refining weapons was the weeping demon lord. However, when the sect leader was refining listen to spring rain, he did not look for the heaven weeping demon lord. Instead, he came by himself. The sect leader is also not good at refining weapons. Since he can succeed, why can't you? How would you know if you don't try?" Chu Xiu's face darkened. He waved his hand and chased Lu Jianghe to the side. This guy was almost never reliable. However, Chu Xiu had no other choice but to follow Lu Jianghe's instructions and give it a try. Next to the rootless sacred flame, Chu Xiu threw the saber embryo in. In an instant, the boundless sacred flame began to burn intensely. Chu Xiu hurriedly poured his earth energy into it. Instantly, it was like pouring oil on the fire. The rootless sacred flame burned even more intensely. It was so bright that it was glaring. Lu Jianghe hurriedly shouted, "Look, it's working. I told you that this was definitely the right thing to do." As the saber embryo was wrapped in the rootless sacred flame, the stone-like thing on the outside began to gradually melt. "Shut up." After scolding Lu Jianghe, Chu Xiu continuously poured spiritual qi power into it. Chu Xiu did not know how to refine weapons, but it seemed like he did not need to know now. The rootless sacred flame and the saber embryo had some reaction, melting all the stone skin on the outside, revealing a bright silver edge. It turned out to be a long and narrow saber, but it was not as curved as listening to spring rain. Instead, it looked like a goose feather saber. The body of the saber was covered with strange natural patterns. Chu Xiu tried to condense his power to the bottom, and he actually pulled out a handle. In the end, the edge of the saber shot straight into the sky, causing everyone on the mountain of Kunlun to look at the sky in shock. They did not know what was happening. Chu Xiu closed his eyes slightly. He could feel an aura coming from the saber. It was an extremely spiritual feeling, and it was in line with Chu Xiu's mind. The saber was giving birth to a weapon spirit. Because it was forged with Chu Xiu's power, the weapon spirit born in the saber was very close to Chu Xiu, and it had already recognized him as its master since it was born. The compatibility of weapons was a very mysterious thing. No matter how strong the weapon was, the weapon spirit would only recognize its master based on feeling. Take Ling Yunzi for example. He was the strongest in the Chunyang Dao sect, but the only one who could freely use the pure yang divine weapon was Shi Yunzi. Now, Chu Xiu's compatibility with the saber was very high, and it was not an exaggeration to say that their minds were connected. At that moment, the sacred flame was withdrawn and poured into the saber. As Chu Xiu waved his hand, the saber, which was shining with endless sharpness, landed in Chu Xiu's hand. In an instant, Chu Xiu's body exploded with endless sharpness. That force even forced Lu Jianghe to retreat. At that moment, Mei Qinglian and the others appeared beside Chu Xiu. When they saw the saber in his hand, they said in surprise, "Is this the natural demonic weapon? It was refined so easily?" Chu Xiu rubbed his nose and said, "It was really quite easy. Perhaps refining a natural item with a natural item is the most correct way to use it." Shang Tianliang, who was standing at the side, said, "Kid, what is the use of this demonic saber? The natural demonic saber's level has probably surpassed the 9 transformation divine weapon." When Chu Xiu heard this, he only slashed forward lightly. Everyone felt a fierce sharpness sweep past, but after that, there was no strange phenomenon. Chu Xiu's evil moon saber's power was even weaker than the blood moon saber's, which distorted the void when it was unsheathed. "That's it?" Chu Wuji said in surprise. The others were a little confused, but Shang Tianliang's expression changed slightly. He said in a low voice, "Wherever this saber passed, space was cut open. Wherever the saber light went, everything was destroyed and dissipated, including the essence of heaven and earth. If I were to fight with Chu Xiu now and use the mysterious heaven and earth realm to control a part of the world, then this saber of his would be enough to cut a hole in my world. This saber is simply the nemesis of the mysterious heaven and earth realm experts. Even heaven and earth can be destroyed. What kind of power is this?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "No, it's not the power of nirvanic extermination. Earlier, when I slashed with my saber, there was no nirvanic extermination energy. More accurately, this energy should be called origin returning." "Origin returning?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "All things return to origin. All the power in this world comes from the 2 powers of yin and yang. The yin and yang of heaven and earth are the most primitive powers in this world. Later on, be it earth, wind, water, fire, or pure yang evil demons, they are all transformed from these 2 powers of yin and yang. That slash of mine just now was actually returning the power that had evolved between the heavens and the earth back to its original form, the yin extreme power. Because the change in power was too small, you all did not notice that after that saber was used, the power of yin in this world rose a little." Shang Tianliang's expression changed slightly when he heard that. "If that's the case, this saber of yours is simply even more terrifying than the invincible power of destruction. If others were to fight with you, as long as their power is hit by this saber of yours, the power will immediately be returned to the extreme and pure power of yin. At the end of the battle, the power of yin will flourish. If you can step into the mysterious heaven and earth realm and control heaven and earth, and comprehend the power of domain, you can completely transform the surrounding area into a boundless demon domain. The power will be incomparably powerful." Chu Xiu nodded. He also thought of this point that Shang Tianliang had mentioned. This saber was indeed worthy of being the ultimate demon weapon born from heaven and earth. Its power was formidable. In fact, it wasn't inferior to Dugu Weiwa's Listen to the Spring Rain. It was just that they were of different attributes. "Have you given this saber a name?" Shang Tianliang suddenly asked. Chu Xiu thought for a while and said, "This saber can return all powers to the origin. Let's call it the Origin Saber." Mei Qinglian rolled her beautiful eyes. "Such a powerful demon saber, but you gave it such a name. Are you worthy of this saber's artifact spirit?" Chu Xiu held the saber in his hand and said in surprise, "What's wrong with this name? It's very vivid. Moreover, the artifact spirit and I are connected. How could it object? Moreover, does an artifact spirit need a name?" Lu Jianghe patted Chu Xiu's shoulder and said, "Forget it. I can see that you have no talent in naming. Let the little girl from the Yin Demon sect do it. Speaking of which, you are quite similar to the sect leader. When the sect leader named Listen to the Spring Rain, guess what he named it? Because Listen to the Spring Rain is incomparably sharp and can cut through all things in the world, the sect leader named it the first chopping saber. It means that nothing can withstand its chop. Chu Xiu shrugged and said indifferently, "All right, you think of a name." Chu Xiu really did not care about things like names. It was just a name. Weapons were used to kill. As long as they were sharp enough to kill, it was enough. Women were just unreasonable. Mei Qingnian thought for a while and said, "The sect leader's demon saber is called Listen to the Spring Rain. It kills people and their blood falls like spring rain. Your saber can return all energy and is unparalleled in breaking formations. How about we call it Break Formations?" It was just a name. Chu Xiu was too lazy to think too much. He nodded and said, "All right, that's it. Demon Saber Break Formations." At the side, Lu Jianghe suddenly fell into a trance. The scene in front of him was so similar. More than 500 years ago, Dugu Weiwa obtained the blade embryo from the primitive devil cave and refined it into tingling spring rain. He gave it a lame name, and it was also the Red Lotus demon venerable who rolled his eyes and changed it for him. At that time, he watched from the side and laughed secretly. Now that 500 years had passed, the scene repeated itself. However, things remained the same, but the people had changed. Lu Jianghe suddenly felt a pain in his heart. Chapter 1052. Chu Xiu did not care about Lu Jianghe's sudden melancholy. What he cared about now was that he had obtained the formation-breaking technique and was finally qualified to challenge someone in the heaven and earth mysterious realm. Previously, when Chu Xiu fought with Ling Yunzi, he was suppressed by Ling Yunzi all the way, but it was not as if he could not fight back. To put it in an arrogant way, Chu Xiu now stood at the peak of the same realm in terms of strength. At the very least, he had not seen anyone who could surpass him in terms of strength. Even the sword sage of the East Sea, Kang Dongming, was not as strong as Chu Xiu. However, Kang Dongming was strong because he had actually reached the heaven and earth mysterious realm, but he had not broken through. Even his swordsmanship cultivation had reached the heaven and earth mysterious realm, so when he unsheathed his sword, he still had the power of the heaven and earth mysterious realm. Previously, Chu Xiu could rely on his own strength and foundation to fight against Ling Yunzi head-on. Now that he had the ability to break through the formation, when he fought against the existence of the elucidation of heaven and earth realm, he could completely transform the heaven and earth restoration that his opponent controlled into the most basic power of extreme Yin, breaking his opponent's greatest advantage. Just as Chu Xiu was about to find a place to familiarize himself with the power of the formation-breaking technique in his hand, he suddenly saw something in the rootless sacred flame. The rootless sacred flame was an extremely pure flame. Even though Chu Xiu had used it to temper the blade embryo just now, the outer stone skin had disappeared after it melted. However, there was a strand of pitch-black devil qi in the rootless sacred flame. The devil qi was very inconspicuous and did not have any aura. If Chu Xiu had not looked at the rootless sacred flame subconsciously, he would not have noticed it. Surprised, he sent out a wisp of earth energy, wanting to draw out that wisp of devil qi. However, just as he sensed the devil qi seemed to have a life of its own. It followed Chu Xiu's true energy and entered Chu Xiu's body. The speed of the demonic qi was simply extremely fast. Chu Xiu wanted to resist it, but all the power within his body seemed to have lost its effect in the face of that weak demonic qi, as it was completely useless. As the devil qi entered his body, Chu Xiu immediately began to tremble. No one had noticed Chu Xiu's subtle movements just now. They were still discussing Chu Xiu's demonic saber. Who would have thought that Chu Xiu would immediately tremble, giving everyone a fright? Did he start dancing excitedly because he refined a supreme divine weapon? This seemed to be something that Lu Jianghe could do, not something that Chu Xiu could do. Then what is he doing now? Is he having an epileptic fit? Lu Jianghe went over to pat Chu Xiu, but in the next moment, a monstrous devil qi bloomed around Chu Xiu, directly bouncing Lu Jianghe away. Lu Jianghe was just about to scold Chu Xiu for turning his back on him when Shang Tianliang said loudly with a solemn expression, "Wait. Something is wrong." At this time, the demonic lines on Chu Xiu's face rose, and his whole person became extremely terrifying. Although the aura was strong, it was definitely not the aura that Chu Xiu had when he was at his normal state. Shang Tianliang waved his hand, and this part of the world formed a domain, wrapping Chu Xiu in it. However, in the next moment, an extremely strong force suddenly broke out, smashing Shang Tianliang's domain into pieces. Everyone present was shocked. No one could understand what had happened to Chu Xiu. At this time, Chu Xiu's spiritual energy was completely immersed in a chaotic state. Not to mention the others, even Chu Xiu himself did not know what had happened to him. Countless blurry scenes flashed in his mind, and those scenes were very mysterious. There were heaven and earth, yin and yang, and there seemed to be a world that was constantly replaying. Gods, Buddhas, immortals, demons, and all kinds of legendary and imaginary existences flashed in Chu Xiu's mind. He could not explain them clearly, and it even made Chu Xiu's head feel like it was about to explode. In the end, everything seemed to return to chaos and completely dissipated. Chu Xiu slowly opened his eyes, and Shang Tianliang and the others were looking at him from more than 100 feet away. It was not that they did not want to get closer, but the powerful aura on Chu Xiu's body just now did not give them a chance to get close at all. Chu Xiu smiled bitterly and said, "If I said that I don't even know what happened to me just now, would you believe me?" Shang Tianliang nodded and said, "I believe you because that kind of power is not something you can control at all. Even I felt my heart palpitate when I sensed that power. How do you feel now? Did you obtain some kind of opportunity, or is there something in your body?" Chu Xiu checked his body. After a while, he shook his head and said, "Nothing." Shang Tianliang frowned and said, "Nothing? That doesn't make sense." Based on the powerful aura on Chu Xiu's body just now, he was sure that something must have happened to Chu Xiu's body. In the end, there was nothing unusual about Chu Xiu's body. Even Chu Xiu did not find it unreasonable, let alone Shang Tianliang. Looking at the rootless sacred flame, a strange look flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. He had already guessed wrong in his heart. The changes in his body should be related to the primitive demon's cave. Previously, when he was in the rootless sacred flame, there was no trace of demonic aura. It was only after he refined the saber embryo that it appeared. If this thing was born in the primitive demon's cave, it actually made sense. After all, anything that appeared in the primitive demon's cave was possible. Since he could not figure it out, Chu Xiu did not think too much about it. His time was precious. Although the righteous sects did not come to find trouble with him for the time being, who knew when they would come to find trouble with him? There was not much time left for Chu Xiu. While Chu Xiu was in seclusion, on the other side of the Kunlun mountain range, in front of a palace in Heaven Gate, immortal Lord Luo roared like a mad bull, "Why are you stopping me? That kid actually dared to occupy the Kunlun mountain range. He is rebelling. If we don't kill him, where is the dignity of Heaven Gate?" Heaven Gate was also in the Kunlun mountain range, so even if Jun Wuxian was in seclusion, all the people in Heaven Gate saw the scene of the rootless sacred flame reigniting and knew what was going on. Chu Xiu had killed Kuang Sheiyue, so he had a huge grudge with Heaven Gate. Now that Chu Xiu had ascended the Kunlun mountain, Heaven Gate should be the first to react. But this time, Heaven Gate did not do anything. The reason was simple. It was not that Heaven Gate did not want to do anything, but Jun Wuxian was in seclusion. The strictness of the hierarchy in Heaven Gate was beyond the imagination of the people in Jianghu. For example, in the Great Light Temple or the Chunyang Dao sect, although Su Xi and Ling Yunzi were the strongest in the mysterious realm of heaven and earth, they were kind to their fellow disciples. But in Heaven Gate, Jun Wuxian was the real god. In the past, Lin Sunglong had done something wrong and was slapped by Jun Wuxian a few times. To the other existences in the spiritual cultivation realm, it was a humiliation. But to Lin Sunglong, it was Jun Wuxian showing mercy. The order of Heaven Gate could be seen from this. Without Jun Wuxian's instructions, the others did not dare to act rashly, nor did they dare to act on their own. But immortal Lord Luo was different. He was guarding the formation in his palace, so he did not know about the news of the rootless sacred flame reigniting. He only found out about it after he came out of seclusion. So, immortal Lord Luo was instantly furious. Back then, he was scared off by Chu Xiu and hurried back to Heaven Gate. It could be said that he had lost all his face. It could even be said that among the divine generals of Heaven Gate, he was the most shameful one. Throughout history, the divine generals of Heaven Gate did not care about the ordinary martial artists in the underworld. They even regarded themselves as gods. But only he, immortal Lord Luo, had suffered 2 losses in the hands of the martial artists of the underworld. The first time was when he met Chu Kuanga. He was seriously injured and on the verge of death. He escaped back to Heaven Gate and lost the heavenly key. He only got it back after a few decades. The second time was when he met Chu Xiu. This time, it was even worse. He was scared off and even pulled Jun Wuxian, shouting that Dugu Weiwei was back. In the end, he was slapped by Jun Wuxian. Only then did he calm down. But this made him even more embarrassed. He was even ridiculed by the other divine generals of Heaven Gate. They said that he should not be called Immortal Lord Luo and should be called God Luo instead. Back then, Divine Lord Luo was still arguing with reason, saying that he had definitely seen Dugu Weiwei's aura on Chu Xiu. All the divine generals of the heavenly gates would never be able to forget a scene they had seen when they became divine generals. It was a scene of Dugu Weiwei massacring the members of the heavenly gates. That fear was imprinted in their hearts. That was also the most tragic moment of the heavenly gates in all these years. But later, immortal Lord Luo seemed to understand that Chu Xiu was a martial artist of the hidden devil lineage. He had also obtained Dugu Weiwei's legacy cultivation method. At the same time as he obtained the secret art, it was possible that he had also obtained some artifacts that contained Dugu Weiwei's aura. Perhaps it was those things that had scared him away back then. He had indeed been a little too cautious. Especially after the news of Dugu Weiwei's reincarnation spread, immortal Lord Luo was even more convinced that Chu Xiu had nothing to do with Dugu Weiwei. After all, their ages did not match. So when he learned that Chu Xiu had occupied Kunlun Mountain, immortal Lord Luo was the most agitated one. He wanted to seek revenge on Chu Xiu out of humiliation, but was stopped by Lin Songlong. Immortal Lord Luo. Stop fooling around. The sect leader is in seclusion. If you want revenge, you want to go down the mountain, and you want to find trouble with Chu Xiu, have you ever gotten permission from the sect leader? And have you forgotten how Kuang Shiyue died? Kuang Shiyue died in the hands of Chu Xiu. Immortal Lord Luo snorted coldly. Kuang Shiyue, that madman, was killed because he underestimated his enemy. What does that have to do with me? Do you think that I am inferior to Kuang Shiyue? Lin Songlong widened his eyes and said, even if you are better than Kuang Shiyue, you are no match for Chu Xiu. Kuang Shiyue was killed by Chu Xiu even after using the evil moon blade. Chapter 1053. The quarrel between Lin Songlong and Sir God Luo attracted the attention of many warriors in the Elysium, including a few divine generals. However, they didn't try to persuade Sir God Luo. Instead, they were watching the show. The relationship between the divine generals of the Elysium was definitely not harmonious. It could even be said that they were hostile. This wasn't because they were all petty, but because of the way the Elysium selected the divine generals. They were destined to not have a harmonious relationship. Perhaps they had already experienced countless life and death battles before becoming divine champions, so it was already quite a feat for them to be able to talk calmly with one another. However, after becoming immortal generals of the Elysium Gates, they had fewer chances to fight against each other. As a result, apart from some experienced immortal generals who had carried out missions together and understood each other's strength, the rest of them were unconvinced and felt that they were much more powerful than each other. For example, Sir God Luo was like this. He didn't think that he was weaker than Kuang Shiyue. Kuang Shiyue had died in the hands of Chu Xiu, but it didn't mean that he would die in the hands of Chu Xiu. Especially after seeing the divine generals of the Elysium watching the show, Sir God Luo was even more furious. He shook off Lin Songlong and left the Elysium. Lin Songlong and Sir God Luo weren't on good terms. He stopped Sir God Luo because he didn't want to affect the overall situation of the Elysium because of an idiot. In Lin Songlong's mind, Jun Wuxian was a true god. He was very dissatisfied with people like Sir God Luo who didn't care about the overall situation. Just as Lin Songlong was about to stop him, a young man in a red cloak said lazily, "Lin Songlong, why are you stopping him? If that blockhead wanted to court death, then let him go. It's better if he is killed by Chu Xiu. He has been a divine general for so many years. It's time for a change, isn't it? There are many people waiting down there." Lin Songlong glanced at the young man and snorted, "Shui Wuli, don't be sarcastic." This person was the new divine general of the Elysium after Kuang Shiyue's death. Although Shui Wuli was a newcomer, it didn't mean that he was weak. Every once in a while, the Elysium would conduct a ranking of the divine generals. Only the 9 strongest people were qualified to be the 9 great divine generals of the Elysium. Although Shui Wuli was not a divine general before, he was the strongest martial artist in the Elysium apart from the 9 divine generals. It could even be said that everyone had already guessed that there would definitely be a place for Shui Wuli in the divine general ranking this time, while someone else would be eliminated. However, Kuang Shiyue died before the divine generals could be ranked. Therefore, Shui Wuli, who was the strongest among them, did not even have to participate in the divine generals ranking. Instead, he directly became one of the 9 great divine generals. It was not a big deal for Sir God Luo to die. There were many people behind him who were eyeing this position. Just as Lin Songlong was about to say something, his expression suddenly changed. Damn it. If Sir God Luo were to go, he would definitely die. He doesn't seem to know that Chu Xiu has a heaven and earth mysterious realm expert under his command. The divine generals of the Elysium actually only had 2 responsibilities. One was to guard the formation seal, and the other was to search for the heavenly key in the outside world. Guarding the array formation seal actually didn't need to stare unblinkingly every day. They only needed to increase their strength every few days and reinforce the seal every few months. Therefore, most of the time, they would either be in seclusion or come out to take a stroll. Previously, because Sir God Luo had been humiliated twice in a row, he had not appeared for a long time. The information about Chu Xiu was also random. He did not have a clear understanding of him at all. It seemed that everyone's topic was focused on Chu Xiu's strength. No one had mentioned to Sir God Luo that there was a heaven and earth mysterious realm expert beside Chu Xiu. At this moment, a dignified old man in luxurious clothes and purple boots walked over. He said in a deep voice, "Why are you all gathered here?" Seeing this old man, everyone present bowed and said, "Greetings, Lord Diwu." There were only so many people in the Elysium, so there were no special positions. Other than Jun Wuxian, the leader, the rest were the 9 divine generals. However, the 9 great godly generals did not see eye to eye with each other. Conflicts and insults were common, but among the 9 great godly generals, the only one who was publicly acknowledged to be the strongest was the leader of the 9 great godly generals, the 5th Qi Song. He was also a heaven and earth profound understanding supreme expert. Legend had it that Diwu Qi Song was very old. When Jun Wuxian became the leader of the Elysium, he was already one of the 9 divine generals. Therefore, he was older than everyone present. In the Elysium, he was in charge of the strongest seal. At the same time, he was also the most trusted by Jun Wuxian. When Lin Songlong saw Diwu Qi Song, he quickly asked, "Lord Diwu, has the leader come out of seclusion?" Something big has happened. Immortal Lord Luo went to East Kunlun alone to find trouble with Chu Xiu. Diwu Qi Song's expression suddenly changed. He shouted angrily, "Who allowed him to make the decision? There are so many of you here, and you can't even stop Immortal Lord Luo? Useless." The others did not know about Chu Xiu's background, but Diwu Qi Song knew. As the leader of the Elysium, Jun Wuxian naturally would not handle some complicated matters personally. Therefore, Diwu Qi Song was in charge. After the incident in the primitive devil cave, Jun Wuxian was seriously injured by Zhong Xinxiu and went into seclusion. The rest of the matters were taken care of by Diwu Qisong. Because Chu Xiu killed Kuang Xieyue, he also carefully investigated Chu Xiu's information. The more he investigated, the more shocked he became. The Elysium was far away in Kunlun, and there was no intelligence network in the Central Plains. Some news in the underworld would inevitably be delayed. Only a short time had passed, and a figure like Chu Xiu had risen in the underworld. It was true that the Elysium was far away in Kunlun, and it was true that they were high and mighty. However, that was only to the ordinary underworld forces. When facing forces like the Great Light Temple or the Celestial Master Abode, the Elysium could not maintain their high and mighty attitude. And now, the forces that Chu Xiu controlled were strong enough, so strong that the Elysium had to take them seriously. At this time, Immortal Lord Luo went to find trouble with Chu Xiu. If that was not seeking death, then what was? Lin Sunglong said helplessly, I tried to stop him, but with Immortal Lord Luo's character, who could stop him? Diwu Qisong looked at Xue Wuli and the other Elysium warriors present and immediately understood what was going on. He shook his head helplessly. There was no other way. The Elysium system caused the competition to be extremely cruel. As long as one could stand out in this kind of competition, they were the best among those of the same level. Although they were all in the true fire spirit refinement realm, the Elysium Divine Generals were definitely among the top of the true fire spirit refinement realm powerhouses in the entire underworld. However, it was precisely because of this competitive relationship that the relationship between the Elysium Divine Generals was not good. When faced with such a situation, it was good enough that they did not watch the show. How could they help? Lin Songlong, come with me to East Kunlun and stop Immortal Lord Luo. As he spoke, Diwu Qisong brought Lin Songlong to chase after Immortal Lord Luo. After they left, Xue Wuli chuckled at the crowd. I see that Immortal Lord Luo's forehead is dark. I'm afraid that he will not be able to survive this time. Is there anyone who is interested in the position of Divine General? You can give it a try. Everyone present had different expressions on their faces. There were many warriors in the true fire spirit refinement realm in the Elysium, but there were only 9 Divine Generals. To be precise, there were only 8. No one dared to covet Diwu Qisong's position. Therefore, there were many people who hoped that Immortal Lord Luo would die. At this time, in front of the Dragon Gate in West Kunlun, Chu Wuji was directing some warriors of the Yinma clan to repair the Dragon Gate. Chu Xiu ascended to Kunlun and re-erected the banner of the Diabolism clan. This was a huge matter. When the news spread to the Jianghu, it set off waves. However, for the Diabolism clan, it was a golden age that gave them hope again. Previously, the Diabolism clan was in decline, and some rogue cultivators of the Diabolism clan lived even more miserably. Sects of the Bright Demon clan such as the moon-worshipping cult were not something that one could join just because one wanted to. If one were to join the Yinma clan, to be honest, the Yinma clan at that time was fighting on their own. They were not considered strong and could not provide enough protection for them. However, it was different now. Chu Xiu was rebuilding the Diabolism clan in Kunlun Mountain. This was equivalent to a lighthouse, attracting countless Diabolism warriors to seek refuge. For these people, Chu Xiu's attitude was to welcome them all. Of course, among these people, there were weak and strong, talented and poor. It was impossible for Chu Xiu to treat them equally. Therefore, after they had all ascended to Kunlun Mountain, they would be divided into different ranks. Just like the Kunlun Devil cult, they would establish various halls and redistribute the warriors. The Dragon Gate was the face of the Kunlun Devil cult. At this time, of course, it had to be carefully repaired. Moreover, Chu Wuji's task was to temporarily guard the Dragon Gate. To guard the Dragon Gate, he had to find a warrior of the Yinma clan who was a direct descendant of the Yinma clan. Moreover, he had to have enough weight. Mei Qinglian was a woman. In her words, "Are you willing to let a delicate beauty like me show up in public every day?" Lu Jiang he could also do it, but he was a little unreliable. Maybe people would be scared away by him before they could ascend to Kunlun Mountain. Therefore, only Chu Wuji was suitable for this position. At present, the news had just spread. Apart from some diabolism warriors in the western regions, the diabolism warriors in the central plains had not appeared yet. Therefore, during this time, Chu Wuji was very relaxed. He moved a chair and sat there every day to supervise the work. At this time, Chu Wuji suddenly sat up, and there was a trace of seriousness in his eyes. In the distance, a burly figure in armor walked towards the dragon gate. His momentum was strong and solid. He was actually in existence in the spiritual cultivation realm with real fire. Moreover, Chu Wuji could see at a glance that the other party might not come with good intentions. Chapter 1054. Chu Wuji did not know Sir God Luo. Ever since Sir God Luo was scared away, he had not appeared in Jianghu for a long time. However, a true fire spirit refinement realm cultivator had appeared in front of Dragon Gate Pass in such a threatening manner. Even an idiot would know that he was here to cause trouble. Chu Wuji waved his hand to signal the other warriors to move aside. He stood up and said in a low voice, "My friend, why have you come to the devil cult?" Sir God Luo glanced at Chu Wuji as if he was looking at an ant, which made Chu Wuji feel very uncomfortable. "Where's Chu Xiu?" As soon as Chu Wuji heard this, he knew that the other party was here to cause trouble. He snorted and said, "Which sect are you from? Do you really think that the devil cult has just taken over Kunlun and that we can be bullied at will?" Sir God Luo sneered and threw a punch at Chu Wuji without saying a word. Chu Wuji did not expect that Sir God Luo would suddenly attack him. Hastily, the shining moon blade was placed horizontally in front of Chu Wuji. It was clearly noon, but the moonlight shrouded Chu Wuji, protecting him within. He did not know Sir God Luo's background, so he could only play it safe and take a defensive position. However, as Sir God Luo's punch landed, there was no movement in the air, but the next moment, Chu Wuji felt like he was in a boundless purgatory of blades. A violent wind shrouded him and tore the moonlight around him. With a loud bang, the moonlight around Chu Wuji shattered. He suddenly felt an unparalleled force descending, and he could not help but fly backward. The next moment, Chu Wuji pinched a seal with his hand. The moon blade in his hand danced in the air and slashed at Sir God Luo with boundless sharpness. At the same time, the crimson moon in the sky released boundless blood evil chi. It transformed into a crimson moon that fell from the sky and slashed at Sir God Luo. Divine Lord Luo sneered. He did not take these ordinary true fire spirit refinement realm martial artists in the Jianghu seriously. Weak, too weak. Forming hand seals, Chu Wuji seemed to be surrounded by invisible walls in an instant. A powerful force strangled everything, and it was still shrinking. The moon blade and the blood moon slashed at the invisible wall, producing a series of rumbling sounds, but they were unable to break it. Chu Wuji even discovered that he was actually unable to borrow the energy of the heavens and the earth while being enveloped by the invisible wall. Domain. Only the strongest of the mysterious realm of heaven and earth could control a part of the world and make it listen to their commands, condensing it into a domain. The domain formed by this person was able to seal his attack and even prevent him from borrowing the power of heaven and earth. If this wasn't a domain, what was it? However, the person in front of him was clearly in the true fire spirit refinement realm. The martial artists in the Elysium cultivated techniques from the ancient times. Although they came from the same source as the techniques that were circulating in the Jianghu, they were somewhat different. This secret technique of Sir God Luo's was not a domain, but it had some characteristics that were extremely similar to the domains condensed by the existences in the mysterious realm of heaven and earth. After all, Chu Wuji had only stepped into the true fire spirit refinement realm not long ago. Even if his combat power was not weak, he was suppressed to the point where he could not fight back against a divine general of the Elysium. The demonic martial artists around him were shocked. Some of the smarter ones quickly ran up the mountain to report. Previously, they had thought that it was a good thing that Kunlun Mountain was so majestic. However, it seemed like it was a trap. Without a formation to transmit information, they had to climb a cliff that was thousands of feet high to reach the peak. When the martial artists who came to report arrived at the peak, they were dumbfounded. This was because the higher-ups under Chu Xiu's command on Kunlun Mountain did not seem to be there. Lu Jiang he did not know where he had gone. He had gone to search for memories from 500 years ago, saying that he wanted to reminisce. Shang Tianyang temporarily guarded the peak of Kunlun Mountain and did not return to Merchant City. However, he did not want to cultivate in seclusion, so he wandered around Kunlun during this period of time. He wanted to see if there was the legendary Tianshan snow lotus in this place and if he could plant one. Qin Chaoxian and the other martial artists who had been coerced by Chu Xiu to join the Kunlun devil cult were also not there at this time. They went back to pack their things and prepared to completely move their sects to Kunlun Mountain. As for Chu Xiu, of course, he was in seclusion. Therefore, after searching for a long time, the martial artists who came to report could only find Mei Qinglian. Hearing that someone had come to fight, Mei Qinglian's expression suddenly changed. Previously, Chu Xiu had said that he was not sure how long the trap he had set up could last. Those martial artists of the righteous sects would not keep looking for clues about Dugu Weiwei's reincarnation just because of a piece of silk cloth. When they got tired of looking and found that they could not find it, they would come back to find trouble with Chu Xiu. However, Mei Qinglian did not expect that time would be so fast. Just when she wanted to immediately go down the mountain to support Chu Wuji, Chu Xiu had already come to her side. He asked the disciple who came to report, "How many people came? Do you know them?" Seeing that Chu Xiu had appeared, the disciple seemed to have found his backbone. He hurriedly said, "There is only one person, but I don't know him. Even Lord Chu Wuji doesn't know him." A cold light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. He said, "He dares to barge into my Kunlun Mountain alone. Is he courting death?" With that, Chu Xiu pulled Mei Qinglian and went down the mountain. Although he had been in seclusion, he was not in a life-or-death seclusion. He was only preparing to familiarize himself with the power of the devil saber. Although the weapon spirit was connected to Chu Xiu, the power of the devil saber was a different matter. Moreover, Chu Xiu was preparing to carefully check the strange devil qi in his body. Of course, he still did not have any clues. At the same time, at the foot of the mountain, Chu Wuji had been suppressed to the extreme by Divine Lord Luo. The area of Wenzhong around him had been sealed by Divine Lord Luo's domain. No matter how much power he used, he could not break it. Seeing that the domain was about to crush him, Chu Wuji suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. The crimson blood merged with his moon blade. In an instant, a crimson moon appeared in the sky. His entire body had merged with the crimson moon and exploded with boundless sharpness. Finally, he cut a hole in the domain and escaped. However, his face was still pale. Divine Lord Luo looked surprised. He said, "Oh, you were able to escape from my domain. I have underestimated you. You are just an ant, but you do have some power." As Divine Lord Luo's voice fell, he clenched his hands. Two storms were pinched in his hands and suddenly smashed down. The wind and clouds surged and the heaven and earth roared. The power seemed to be able to turn the world upside down. Divine Lord Luo naturally had some confidence since he dared to find trouble with Chu Xiu. Being able to become a divine general of Elysium represented their power and also represented that they were extremely outstanding in a certain aspect. Divine Lord Luo was an impulsive and hot-tempered boor. He was often not agile in his work and had been slapped several times by Jun Wuxian. However, after so many divine general competitions, he was still able to sit firmly in his position. This proved his power. Just as Chu Wuji was about to burn his blood essence to fight for his life again, a saber light suddenly fell. The saber light was dazzling like a bright moon in the sky. Wherever it passed, the terrifying storm stopped and was decomposed into the most extreme Yin power. Half of the storm was split, but the other half was held in Divine Lord Luo's hands. The change in the atmosphere and the explosion of power caused Divine Lord Luo to take 2 steps back. He looked at the person with fear. However, the next moment, his gaze turned into deep anger. Chu Xiu. You finally dare to show yourself. Previously, Chu Xiu thought that it was a righteous sect that had come and he was shocked. He didn't expect that it was just Divine Lord Luo. In fact, Chu Xiu had also expected that Elysium would come to find trouble with Chu Xiu. However, if Elysium wanted to find trouble with him, it should be Jun Wuxian. In the end, it was just Divine Lord Luo. Chu Xiu immediately understood what was going on. This person should have come to settle a personal grudge with him. Chu Xiu said calmly, I've never hidden. Why wouldn't I dare? But you, Divine Lord Luo. Looking at Chu Wuji's low aura, Chu Xiu's face darkened and he shouted, You came to the Kunlun Devil cult and injured the people of the Kunlun Devil cult. You're courting death. Divine Lord Luo laughed and said, You think you're from the Kunlun Devil cult? That's hilarious. If Duga Weiwei occupied Kunlun Mountain today, I wouldn't even have the courage to go near it. But you, Chu Xiu, what gives you the right to be so arrogant? You even dare to re-establish the devil cult. You don't know what you're talking about. East Sea Freedom, West Sea Kunlun, Elysium. Kunlun Mountain belongs to the Elysium. If you don't get lost, you'll die here. After Divine Lord Luo finished speaking, he found it strange that Chu Xiu wasn't angry. Chu Xiu was just looking at him strangely, as if he was looking at an idiot. Of course, that was indeed the case. Chu Xiu looked at Divine Lord Luo as if he was looking at an idiot. If Jun Wuxian said that, it wouldn't be a problem. But Divine Lord Luo came alone and said those words to him. Why? Did he really think that he wouldn't dare to kill him? That couldn't be right. Kuang Shiyue had already died in his hands. He should know that he had the guts to kill the Elysium Divine Generals. Chu Xiu couldn't understand where Divine Lord Luo's confidence came from. How could he know that Immortal Lord Luo, a boorish fellow, was actually fearless because he was ignorant? His impression of Chu Xiu had only stopped at the moment when Chu Xiu had been scared away, as well as some rumors in the past few years. He did not even know of Shang Tianliang's existence. Chu Xiu squinted and said, It's not like I haven't killed the Elysium Divine Generals before. Killing one is killing, killing two is still killing. Guan Siyu, Master Guan, was once my superior. Chu Kuanga, Master Chu, is also someone I admire. It's not worth it for both of them to die in the hands of an idiot like you. I'll send you down to meet them now. They should be very happy. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.